truly amazing to have the NOPD and experts like ION Surveillance, individuals who have studied this technology, how it's been used and misused in other places, at the table to craft and develop proper guardrails to make sure that the technology is effective. Because, I mean, people in the city, if we spend money on something, they want to see results immediately after implementation, and we have to be able to make sure that we're going to be able to track how it's used and what results we're getting from it. So I think this ordinance is a good one if it has groups like ION Surveillance and the ACLU at the table with the NOPD to collectively come up with how it will be deployed. And I can think of the situation with if it was used for specific purposes. And I would suggest that you pose this question to Marvin Arnold, who's present today, and other individuals who have worked on this for years. The takeover situation. Individuals, and the world has changed a lot. Individuals are literally bragging about criminal activity on social media. Individuals are putting their faces and their guns on social media, bragging about what they plan to do or what they've already done, right? Or advertising everyone come to New Orleans and burn donuts on the streets like we did in Lafayette and East Baton Rouge the month before. Perhaps ION Surveillance would say, you know what, the best use of this technology would be to use it on social media to prevent these individuals from starting a takeover in the city of New Orleans. As you described me as a gatekeeper, obviously I'm going to always make sure that any case that comes before me is constitutional, has evidence, that probable cause was present, and will continue to work with my chief on making sure that we're working with investigators and detectives to build the best cases. So this ordinance is timely, and I believe that there are a number of people in the room today that can weigh in to help craft it, to make it something that will protect the people of this city and not hurt them.
Thank you very much.
Councilmember Moreno for follow-up.
Just one follow-up real quick to that particular question. Would you support non-law enforcement agencies to be able to use facial recognition technology on investigations?
That's a bit problematic from my perspective because, you know, we rely on the work of law enforcement. A lay witness testifying in court is very different from a lay witness, plumber, doctor, testifying is very different from a police officer. Police officers need reasonable suspicion to stop a person to have a conversation. They need probable cause to detain an individual. I know the chief has talked about the need and use of force multipliers. It could absolutely be one. I think there's probably a lot of wisdom in making sure that we're working with groups like ION Surveillance and the ACLU and the NOPD to develop how this will be used by law enforcement before we extrapolate it out to non-law enforcement. And we also need to talk about what we're deeming as non-law enforcement. Will this be post-certified? Would this be retired NOPD? We have to really suss out exactly what we're talking about. The devil is always going to be in the details of this work. You know, a lot of people talk about Big Brother. A lot of people talk about cameras. When the first time we used cameras in the city of New Orleans, a lot of folks in the hospitality industry were concerned about people not coming into their bars because they're coming in with their girlfriend instead of their wife, right? Big Brother getting involved with who I'm drinking with versus trying to solve a crime, right? I think it's been proven that NOPD has used that technology wisely so far. But there were guardrails. It's been
proven that you should take your wife.
What's that?
So what was proven was that you should take your wife.
Absolutely. That's not the DA's job to solve those.
Yo, Oliver's wild, and he said He's supposed to bring your wife. Don't worry about sneaking around, dog. I'm dying.
Questions?
Oh, yes.
Another question from.
And I have a follow-up
And-
after him.
Well, I'd like to have the follow-up relative to this ordinance, because there's an amendment to this ordinance. Unfortunately, it was introduced on yesterday, but it was made available to us on yesterday, which substitutes for city or any official investigative body of the city, criminal investigation department, crime of violence.
Mr.
police
Chairman,
officer,
point of
and the
order.
like.
Point of order.
How's that a
Councilmember.
point of
He's got-
order?
Point of order. Point of order.
Robert's rules.
We have, and this item is later in the agenda. It is specifically enumerated. And once you start reading amendments to an item that's on the agenda further down, you are, in essence, moving that item further up the agenda without a vote of the committee, of which the author is not a member. So if we're going to discuss the merits of the bill, somebody needs to move for a suspension to have the bill heard sooner.
I don't believe that we need a suspension, but there was a reference to the item as a follow-up to my.
Got him!
And my point remains,
I
Mr.
understand.
Chairman,
I
that he's
understand.
reading amendments to a bill
okay.
that we haven't heard yet,
Councilman-
nor have the
Councilman
members adopted
Yes,
the amendments.
I agree. Okay, a question was asked. I'd like to continue with my questions if possible.
As long as the question isn't
The question has nothing
germane
to do with
this.
the existing ordinance.
Thanks. If the question is germane to what we're dealing with right now, Councilmember Green.
Yes. Could you explain the role of the DA relative to bond so that the public knows? Because I think that I saw, I hope it was a typo, that someone who was accused of shooting 2 girls and leaving them for dead in New Orleans East, I'm sorry, it has nothing to do with the fact that it's New Orleans East, it's New Orleans. Someone who was accused of that crime and is in prison right now was given a $50,000 bond. That has to be a mistake. It has to be $500,000, but maybe I missed that. What would your role have been in recommending to the magistrate in that particular instance, a crime of attempted murder, where 2 girls were left for dead, that the bond should be a certain amount?
I think that bond is too low. My ADAs at first appearance are pushing for bonds that keep the public safe. I know this case. When I saw where
You
the
know, I
bond
think it'd
was
be
set
much
at,
better for all of us as
I called my
Councilmember
first
Eugene Green would
assistant.
at least
I
pretend
called my
to hide
special
his
assistant. And I
bias.
called
It
the
would be a
persons that were
lot,
present
you
in court
know.
to try
I
to
don't
figure
know.
out how on earth a bond could have been set that low. I've also asked that we petition to raise that bond as well. But my office fought and will always fight for a higher bond. And so you ask what my role is. My role is to advocate in court and to argue. And we will argue for high bonds or no bonds for individuals that are dangerous to the public.
I'm not sure who this
I
dude
believe
is
that
sitting behind
$50,000
Councilmember Jason
for
Williams,
the
but that
offense
is a
that was
fine
described by a
hat that this
person
brother
who had
has, and
previous
he's
charges
clearly,
out of Jefferson Parish and
he's
brought
jolly
these
about
young
something
women
because
from
he
St.
looks to be
Tammany
laughing.
Parish and left them for dead. I think he should have no bond. The facts of the case speak for themselves. But I do believe that $50,000 is too low of a bond, and we will continue to argue that that bond should be higher.
Not on. Yes, I'm coming. Real quick.
I'm still asking questions.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. You have commented on wasted resources in terms of the police bringing you evidence of crimes that, in your opinion, waste the public's time in terms of prosecution. I went to a meeting the other night where a member,
I said that today.
you've used the word wasted resources. It's in here.
Yes, I said.
Wait, I can pick it up. You
pick it
used
up.
the word wasted resources. You don't want to see that happen. I think that unfortunately that sends a message that I heard just the other night at a meeting at the fairgrounds, and I'd like you to clarify. Someone who commits burglary, someone who commits crimes on the street, such as exposure, if you will, they're still committing crimes. And the police have an obligation when called to bring those persons in. Could you send a message to the public relative to crimes other than murder, rape, armed robbery, and attempted murder, that they can expect that there will be a prosecution in certain instances?
I'm glad you brought that up. If there's some confusion at a neighborhood meeting, we brought the slide up again so that we could be clear on what we're talking about. And the slide reads, resumption of jury trials. Since the resumption of jury trials in March, this administration has tried 24 cases in front of a jury, which is at a pace of 96 in a year which is higher than any other parish in the state. The second bullet point says we, Orleans Parish District Attorney's Office, are not wasting our resources trying low-level cases. What that means, Councilmember Green, it does not mean that these individuals are not being prosecuted. It does not mean that these individuals are not being held accountable. It does not mean that the police department wasted its time when it arrested those individuals. It just means that when there are 9 murder cases, 3 attempted murder cases, 4 rape cases, 1 involving a serial rapist over the course of 5 years, and 1 armed robbery that are in the queue in court, we're probably not going to try a misdemeanor marijuana that day instead of the murder case. We're probably not going to move forward on the burglary charge when there are murders that are set for trial. It does not mean we are not trying those cases. It just means those are not the cases that are first up in line in the first 2 months out of my first 2 years that I have to try cases. We're just trying to prioritize the woman power and manpower and resources that we have. And I dare say, I doubt there's a single judge at Tulane and Broad that would even let us move forward on a low-level, nonviolent trial when we've got murder cases, rape cases, and armed robbery cases that have been waiting since 2020. So
Right.
Please take it back to that neighborhood group. Please invite me to that neighborhood group. I'll bring the stats. I'll bring the people. I'll bring the victims and survivors if they're willing to come to explain how desperate they were to have their cases tried and apologize if they jumped the line in front of some other low-level case.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think the public needs to know.
How you like that, Mr. Greeny Weenie? Huh? Hit the Greeny Weenie on that, big baby.
Think, oh, this is a low-level crime. They're not going to do anything
Dog,
about it.
you
Those
just
cases
Certainly don't want
dog,
the
you just
public-
answered the
Those cases
question,
still
bro.
move
Like he just
forward.
answered
We're
the
still
question. Move on.
prosecuting car
Like literally,
burglaries.
move
We're
on.
still
Come on, dog. You wasting everybody's
prosecuting home
time.
burglars. We're still prosecuting certain drug offenses, trafficking cases. Those cases are still moving forward. And there's a lot of misinformation out there, and I appreciate you sharing what you're hearing, because when things need to be corrected, I think it's important that we correct it. I was at a neighborhood group not that long ago, and a woman told me, she said, well, DA, your progressive agenda has you not prosecuting poor people. And I said, ma'am, what on earth are you talking about? We prosecute poor people every day of the week. Most people live in New Orleans are in fact poor. Most of the defendants who are in court are in fact poor. And she says, no, right here on your website, it says you won't prosecute crimes of poverty. And I said, wow, thank you for saying that. I need to be very clear about that then. A crime of poverty is a homeless person who trespasses to get out of flood water, to get out of the rain. A crime of poverty is a dad stealing Similac from a drugstore after a hurricane when he can't get food for a child. That's a crime of poverty, a crime of desperation. And so I had to explain to her that crimes of poverty, it didn't mean that if a murder was committed or a rape was committed by a poor person, they wouldn't be prosecuted. But there's a lot of misinformation out there. So I really thank you for bringing up what was said so that we can really clear the air and make it really clear what is being done and what's not being done in this administration. A lot of people take the term reform and they bastardized it. They bastardized it. Reform applies in medicine, and you want it if you got a heart attack, if you're about to have a brain surgery. Reform applies to how we build levees. You want it if you live in a bowl. Reform applies to how we police. We have a 21st century police department doing it better than most parishes and other cities do because of the consent decree and because we had a police chief like Shaun Ferguson and Michael Harrison who leaned into doing it better. So reform in the criminal legal system means doing it fair, doing it right, and following the Constitution. That is it. There's no new math, there's no new logic. It means having 12 jurors agree on it. It means not hiding evidence. So at the end of the day, I'm doing the job the same way. I'm just making sure that justice applies to anybody regardless of their socioeconomic status, zip code, or where they live.
Councilmember Green, you said this is your final
This is
question.
my final question. You mentioned that you were not elected to continue to throw innocent black people into jail without evidence. I appreciate that. No one would want to see that happen. No one wants to go to any day, even if it's yesterday, when people have been throwing people into prison without evidence. But can you comment on the New Orleans Police Department and the evidence that you're getting, which allows you to accept the charges in 95% of murder cases, 82% of robbery cases, and 73% of car theft cases?
I swear, it's like every time this dude asks a question, he's got to like read down at his paper to make sure that he's getting his like agenda points out right, and he's gonna go on and go on and go on.
That gives you a chance to have these high rates of acceptance.
So the NOPD has really become the gold standard.
It's really become the gold standard.
In this
You are
country.
very pleased with the
In
work
this
of
country.
Let him answer, Councilman. Yeah, I know, I understand that, but
Thank you.
Yeah, you wasn't expecting that, huh? Nah, you wasn't.
Lean into a consent decree. There's not a police department in this country who can handle crowd control the way NOP does. We as a community take for granted every festival, every Mardi Gras, every Fat Tuesday. We have the biggest parties on earth that marvel a rowdy soccer game in Europe, that rival Carnival in Rio de Janeiro. And year after year, we have these large events, Super Bowl, Final Four, without a hitch, usually with no one getting hurt in the event or outside the event. And that is largely due to the work of the NOPD. People come from all over the country to see how we do it. They don't get credit for it. So I've worked with Chief Ferguson, and we have put together protocols that are getting so much good information with too few players in the system, meaning not enough police officers, not enough ADAs, and we have figured out triage, creative ways to build better cases, to have what we need when it comes to court, and we're able to accept close to 95% of all murder cases. So it is good, and it is improving every day. But the truth of the matter is, when you have an underwoman, undermanned police force and an underwoman, undermanned DA's office in the middle of a crime surge, you have a problem. And we need more resources to do this work better because there are more crimes and there are people working to solve and hold these offenders accountable. But to your other question, have I seen innocent black men thrown in jail? Hell yes. As a 49
During your term?
as a 49-year-old
During your term?
African American man, I have seen New Orleans, Louisiana be the incarceration capital of this country, which means it's the incarceration capital of the world. And at the same time, we've had the dubious distinction of being the exoneration capital of the world, meaning, turns out, some of the people who've been sitting in jail in Angola for 40, 50, 20 years did not even commit the offense. And I've seen them return to this community. So yes, we have returned some individuals who turned out they were innocent of the crime that they committed. And there are those who will say, well, Jason Williams' tenure, there's a lot of people who got out. And out of all of the octogenarians who have been returned to community for crimes they didn't commit, like Betty Brodden, who was raped twice in her home after moving to New Orleans to find a job as a carpenter. A man came into her home and raped her at gunpoint, was attempting to rape her a second time at gunpoint, and she got a hold of the gun and she killed him. And the DA at the time, the police department at the time, they found her to be the criminal. They took her to jail, they tried her, and her 3 children grew up without her for the rest of her life. So in my term, yes, we reevaluated that case, and she was released at about 72 years old, not being able to raise her kids for what? Standing her ground. Something that conservatives talk about a lot, but they don't talk about it a lot when it is a minority or a woman who is standing her ground. Betty Brodden stood her ground in the home that she paid for and murdered a man using a gun he used to rape her. And so, yes, She was innocent. She was released. And every other octogenarian, whether it be from the non-unanimous jury cases or because of innocence or because a alleged victim came forward and said that they lied about what they saw, what they did, some of those folks have returned to community. And not a single octogenarian has recidivated, meaning committed a new crime, not as much as jaywalking. So I know there are conservatives who want to bastardize the word of reform. Just because it didn't happen on my watch, just because it didn't happen in January the 11th, doesn't mean I'm not responsible for the harm that the Orleans Parish District Attorney's Office has caused this community. And if an innocent person went to jail in 1980, 1990, 2000, or 2016, I am responsible for that innocent person sitting in jail. So yes, I have taken the unprecedented work on of reckoning with the sins of the past. That doesn't mean that the officers that are present at the NOPD today are responsible for what occurred. I'm responsible for fixing it, and we're addressing it. But we're also responsible for dealing with the incoming cases that are happening. And I'm gonna say it again, the NOPD is doing an amazing job with not enough and very little, and they need more, and I will advocate for them as loudly as I advocate for myself.
I just want to make it clear that I am 100% in support of what you are doing relative to looking at older cases when people have been convicted or jailed and they are innocent. Just want to be on the record. And I appreciate the work that you're doing.
Thank you, Councilmember.
I appreciate your favorable comments relative to the New Orleans Police.
Y'all heard that, huh? Eugene said he won't be on the record. Well, you on the record. You on the record. We out here. We watching you, cousin. Eyes on you.
I'll be very brief. I think it's important to highlight also that when you talk about your previous statements, your slide about making sure an innocent person doesn't go to jail, that is what an aggressive screening process does as well. So even though you have police officers that accuse someone of a crime because the evidence at the time says that that person did it, part of what a good DA does is you screen a case, you talk to victims, and it has been known across the country, across the world, that witness identification in the moment is often wrong. And that unlike previous DAs, when you're screening a case, if you find out that in the course of the police investigation something went wrong, you rectify that on the front end versus bankrupting someone to defend themselves from a crime that they obviously didn't commit, where a victim, the police, anyone could have done something in good faith error, and cleaning up what we're actually moving forward on. So I think there was an attempt to say that your statement of saying that you would not prosecute innocent people was somehow in conflict with your statements, but the two things work hand in hand. Absolutely. A good prosecutor screens cases to make sure before you put somebody at risk of their life and liberty that it is actually a good case. I want to also make a point, I want you to comment on this. The DA's job, because I used to be a magistrate public defender, the DA's job is to be the counterweight in front of a magistrate judge on a first setting as far as a bond being set. I am beyond disturbed by the bond setting that Commissioner Moore set. Beyond disturbed. Those two young women were raped, and they're both underage. It was aggravated rape, which is life in prison. He also attempted to kill them, which is 10 to 50 years. One of the key standards for bail being set is flight risk. Flight risk and the danger to the community. This individual checks all those boxes. I have no doubt that your DAs, because I know many of your DAs, especially Alex, we've talked about frequently, I am sure they argued for a no bail. And I think that maybe instead of individuals in this audience and the public who always assume that your office didn't argue for the highest bond, they should go look at the tape and see what the argument was. Because at the end of the day, judges have the ability
I've been in some of these court hearings that he's talking about, and it's true. I've seen the DAs push and push and push to try to get something going to no avail, because obviously, like JP just said, man, the judges make those
the responsibility for bond setting to judges, because they make the decision on what a bond is going to be. Not the DA, not the public defender, not the police chief. It's the judges. So if you don't like the bond that gentleman got for raping and trying to kill 2 girls, put the blame where it needs to be, which is the magistrate commissioner that said it. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Vice President.
Sorry.
You accurately articulated the American criminal legal system.
No, let me, I don't mind being here. Everybody reminds me of how long I used to be on the council. Yeah, I used to be on the council when we'd be here 2 days. When New Orleans doesn't have part-time problems, so we would work 24/7. I've been in committee meetings and council meetings that last the 2 days, because that's the level of the work that it required. But there are rules of order that are important. Public comment is important. And I don't mind our members, our great council members, having their points and counterpoints. But it needs to be within the rules of Robert Order, point of personal privilege, and germane to the issue and the topic. So what I'm going to ask my colleagues is that maybe we need to establish some other rules so that we don't belabor points, but that we get to the
So
point.
in case you're wondering why OT is sort of has this sort of space to speak, he's the chair of the Criminal Justice Committee. So this is his committee.
So, Council President, maybe at some point you can call a meeting so we could outline some other rules within those rules for how we deal with issues that come before the council, just so we could have them outlined before we get to these proceedings. Council President says yes. Former Council Member District Attorney Williams.
I want to thank this body for keeping its foot on the gas of the thing that every household is talking about right now, not just in the city of New Orleans, but in this country. This is an unprecedented crime surge. There's some cities that are going to find themselves in this situation for a very long time. I think because of the size of the city of New Orleans, there's really only like 1 degree of separation from all of us. You talk to somebody for a couple of minutes, you're going to figure out how you know them. We can collectively work together to put strategies in place to deal with this surge, to come out of it better than we were before. I stand ready to collaborate. I know that a number of you are working with the city's Truancy Initiative. That also needs to be a huge component. There are a number of schools who have reported to me that they have 50%, sometimes 40% attendance down, meaning kids since the pandemic have not come back to in-person learning. That's elementary and high school. If these high school age kids are not in class, they're in our streets. And although that is not squarely within the DA's bailiwick, it is something that we all play a role on. And I'm very thankful to the Criminal Justice Committee and this body for realizing there's no silver bullet, for also realizing that it is all connected, and realizing that the system has to function even in moments of crisis.
Thank you. I'm not going to belabor this. You and I will continue to talk about this 2-year discussion we had about the importance of cold cases, and now to see you move forward about not just how you deal with old cases and cold cases to exonerate who should not have been convicted, but also to take a look at who the true perpetrators are. So it's a lot deeper than what people think in this conversation. So thank you. Ms. Ford, you had filled out a number 4. Is it for every presenter in terms of 4? If so, you can come. We still have
Looks like we're going back to public comment. Can't wait.
Mr. Waring left. He had also filled out the comment on every section, but I think he's gone now. Ms. Ford.
I did, because this agenda is a little bit different than how we normally do it. And we have these key agencies in the city's criminal justice issues. And I think that it's important for the community to be able to speak with on the issues that's on the agenda, each item, and this is an item on the agenda. So that's why I fill one out. And absolutely, you know, I'm so I'm thankful for the conversation because I wasn't hearing the dialogue about the wrongful incriminations. We can't just behave as if we didn't suffer all of these injustice under our previous leadership in the district attorney's office. We cannot come to the table at this point and be brand new. We might have some new council members, but I'm going to tell you, I was here during some previous really bad district attorneys. So I appreciate where he's coming from. I appreciated hearing him talk about justice and injustice in criminal court. And he is the keeper of that. That district attorney's office is the keeper of that. And the keeper of ending this wrongful incrimination that this city is #1 for. We got to be able to talk about that. We got to be able to talk about what is it going to take for us to overturn this crime wave in our community. Nobody is soft on crime. Anybody that comes up here and tell you, and I've had Mr. Green tell me that I'm just soft on crime. And I'm like, man, who's soft on crime? Who wants to live in a community where they can't go to their grandbaby's graduation?
Get them.
Because they're going to get dead.
Get them.
No, that's not okay.
Get them.
No, it's not okay.
Get them.
Yeah, we still getting wrongfully incarcerated across the city of
Get
New
'em.
Orleans. Hell yeah. You didn't know?
Get
I know.
them.
I know, and I get families who not only are wrongfully incarcerated, I also get those families who believe that just this one family whose loved one was killed at the store on St. Claude, Hanks on St. Claude. And the police went to the scene and determined that the store owner was justifiable in killing this young man outside of the store.
Thank you.
So we need to look at it from all areas and be able to bring that family, because that family has been victimized.
Thank you. Thank you.
That family has been victimized and they did not get justice, and it should be reevaluated and looked into. That young man was killed in front of his 5 children. Who brings their children to the store to rob a store with their 5 children and their fiance in a car? It needs to be reinvestigated. And it's an old case and it still needs to be looked into. We still got stuff going on there that needs to be looked into. And we can't just lock up people every time they've been accused of doing a crime.
Thank you.
We can't do that here.
Thank you. We had some speakers who were filling out cards on this item. If you're going to speak on an issue, I'd appreciate it if you would turn your card in timely. Reverend Brown, you can, if you're speaking, you can go ahead and speak and then turn it in when you finish. Yeah.
Thank you. Reverend Brown.
Okay.
I haven't been down here in a while. I want to thank everybody. I want to thank the City Council for allowing us to speak on this very important issue. I've been dealing with some national issues with national civil rights leaders and stuff like that, so I've been traveling and getting around, but I must deal with the critical issues that are impacting my community. And let me say this here, is that I know when we get in front of the public, we have this persona like police are doing real good. They're doing an excellent job. But in reality, there's a lot of problems within the police department, okay? Number one problem I have, Mr. District Attorney, is that I know some cops who are friends or buddy with drug dealers, and I know this. And thugs on
Why
the
is he
corner shaking
so
their
here's
head
what I'm
talking
kind
to
of curious, and
them
I'll get right back to it. Why is he
like,
addressing the DA
allowing
about
them to do
police?
some
I don't get
stuff.
it.
I know this. I could bring you to the corner, me. So to say that, to try to paint a picture that the police department is so perfect is disingenuous to the community. The reason why you can't clean up the drugs in the community, number one, Councilman Oliver Thomas, is because people are talking to the cameras and not going to the mud. You got to go to the trap house. So we can talk about thugs on the street.
Not the
Donuts.
trap house. Not the trap house.
You know, donut racing. Let me tell you,
Donut race
You
in
can
trap
deal with
houses.
donut race,
Oh man.
What you can't deal with is an old lady walking out of the house and get shot and killed from a stray bullet, or a little child, or people killing themselves in general. Over what? Economic deprivation. You have economic deprivation in this city, and the poverty is so high until people like done lost their mind. Then the chronic drug problem. And I appreciate the government not being hard on drugs, people using drugs, because one time, you know, that we'll lock everybody up who smoke weed or drink or use drugs when we realize this person is sick. In my closing, I had a news conference today with Pastor Robinson and Pastor Dow. And in my closing, I want to say, they asked me a question. What you think the mayor should do? And number one, the mayor should open up a job training facility with job training on site, not a big building on 2-lane street that is just sitting there, $3 million a year. These black males need job skills.
There you go. What do you want the mayor to do?
Out of poverty,
You just got one right there.
You can try all you want. You're not going to be able to do it.
Thank you. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. You're not going to be able to do it.
Are there any other cards on this item number 4?
Police stop messing with drug dealers, you're going to see the city change.
Thank you, District Attorney Williams. Thank you for your presentation. Any online comments? No online comments? Next item on the agenda, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Hey, no, thank you. Well, I just asked if there were any of the cards filled out. Okay, all right. Come on, you get your 2 minutes, man.
Hi, my name is Raphael O'Neill. It's been a few years since I've been here. I was the one that came and asked for a single study proving 5G was going to be safe for humanity.
Yes, ma'am. And
at that time, Jason Williams was at the head of the council for the Smart and Sustainable meeting. And so I find it interesting that in this time now, we've come to a place where now you're at the district attorney. And look, I don't think that we know there's a lot of factors making crime complicated, right? But it's a fact, and this is not a partisan issue, first of all, okay? This is not a partisan issue, except when I say this, but it's not universal. The crime has not risen universally. It is in democratic cities' policy. So this is a matter of policy that has made the crime more...
Oh, Lord, she gave herself away. I was wondering how long it was going to take for the Trump supporter to give herself away. But here she comes with the talking points, and it doesn't seem like she's going to have much sustainable information. And I really don't want this woman to be able to talk on my live stream, so I'm going to just keep on talking over her. The same way that she's trying to just kind of spit out all of this kind of stuff. I mean, look at her, bro. Like, if you actually had a real complaint or something real to say, you don't come here like this, man. You pushing P, lady, and P is propaganda.
We're looking a lot more like China. And this is where this is going. It's a slippery slope.
China, there we go. We got democratic land cities in China. Ding, 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 ding. MAGA alert. She gone.
More of this technocratic...
we got tech.
Non-accountability.
We got big tech. We got China. We got democratic cities and big tech. It's like every time I unmute, it's like, here we go.
I'm going to come back up and talk about that, but the language is very loose. Any public threat, so if I don't wear a mask,
that issue is coming up
public
later.
Threat. These are important issues. Facial recognition, more technology. This is not the solution, not the way to go.
And now she would say, and that's the thing. Like, she may have a great point about facial recognition, but she had to go way off into tinfoil hat lady wearing situations, man.
Today, it's a conflict of interest. It's a conflict of interest.
Thank you very much. Reverend Bell.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. State your name, please.
Pastor Robinson, Victory Praise Ministries. I'm in New Orleans East area. I'm here today because I am very much concerned about our city. I'm concerned about our communities. And especially we know that crime is a hot topic right now. And I decided to take my ministry to the streets of New Orleans. I'm on every corner, just about every crime scene. I go to that scene and I and I pray for the victims and for the communities. Yeah, and what I'm asking is this: that there's a lot of things that we can do in ministry. I see that the city was allotted $155 million on top of $194,000 million, and it came up to be $388 million. What I'm asking is that the council, the city council, the mayor, don't ignore our faith-based ministries. I seen there was a lot of money allotted to.
Don't ignore the faith-based ministries. There was a lot of money allotted.
But I'm asking today that we come to the city council for.
I need a new suit, y'all.
Please
don't ignore us.
Implicate us in your grants, that we can take some finances, that we can go out into the communities and create a solution to try to help the people.
Bring it all into the storehouse so that there may be food in my house.
On crime. Matter of fact, I'll be running for the president of the NAACP coming up this November. And that's how much I'm concerned about trying to make a difference in the city of New Orleans. So my thing is that please don't forget about us with all that money, that $388 million.
He said it. There you go. I'm glad he said it. I'm glad. Please don't leave us out of all of the millions of dollars y'all bought. Please remember the faith-based communities. We know what to do with that money. We know how to get that money out of your hands, baby. Don't forget about me, baby.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. District Attorney. Any closing
I
comments?
just want to say to this committee and to you, Mr. Chair, take a good look at young Aiden here. He'll be on the other side of the dais one day.
Thank you. Thank you. Congratulations, young
Thank you,
man.
Mr. DA. We appreciate it.
Next item on the agenda. Presentation from Police Superintendent Shaun Ferguson.
Oh boy, here we go. All right, I'll be right back. I'm gonna keep it going though.
If it wasn't for facial recognition, I would say.
Thank you, man.
How much ago? We've got 4 hours.
I got to get this mouse to run this thing. So you want me to click it? Oh, you gotta click it right there. Oh, that's really perfect.
No. You saved us another half hour. Yes, it is. Yeah. Counterpoint. Thank you, Chief. You can start your presentation. If you want to introduce us at the table with you, and then please start.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, Council Chairman.
Is your mic?
Yes. All right. Good afternoon, Council Chairman Thomas, President Moreno, Vice President Morrell, Councilmember Leslie Harris.
Well, looks like we got all the white shirts up there. It's going to be a interesting presentation.
I am Shaun Ferguson. I'm the Superintendent of the New Orleans Police. To my left, Chief Chris Goodley, who's over our field operations. Chief Lawrence Dupree, who's over our investigative support bureau. Chief Ota Sandifer, who's over our professional standards and accountability, and Chief Alinda Westbrook, who is over our public integrity bureau. So we are here today to provide you with an update on our operations and efforts to recruit and retain more officers to serve the citizens of New Orleans. It's no secret, we're at a low right now within our staffing, but that has not diminished our commitment of the men and women of the New Orleans Police Department to the safety of our citizens as well as our visitors. This presentation will outline what we continue to do to recruit new officers in an employment market where every other law enforcement agency is attempting to draw from this very same pool. You will be shown how, despite fewer officers on the streets, we have reduced the number of violent incidents while increasing the number of arrests over the last 5 months. It is my hope that most of you
Dog,
will
really?
listen
Roots?
to this presentation
Read
with
Roots
an
out
open mind
loud?
and have
Come
a
on,
desire
man.
to continue this conversation collectively after we leave here today, as we are committed to working together in every step to find innovative solutions. I want to begin with speaking to, I think the last time I presented, excuse me, I left the council with an impression that there was never a plan. If you look at NOPD, join NOPDnews.org, there's a strategic plan that was placed there in 2019. And as I stated in the last session, I've always had a plan. I had to update my plan. And in doing so, more specifically to addressing violent crime. In that plan, there were 4 points in 2019 to help us focus on violent crime. Today I stand before you, I sit before you with 6 points in my updated plan. 1 is always focusing on that methodology of identifying the most violent offenders. 2, expanding our use of our situational response team, our DCAT, District Community Action Team, who works hand in hand with our VCAT, as well as our federal and state partners. Better utilizing our patrol deployment, which we started last week. That is 3. Better utilizing our patrol deployment, which is 12-hour shifts. Improving intelligence sharing amongst members of the criminal justice system. And we've done that, intentionally with our meetings that the district attorney spoke to earlier. Deputizing city employees where applicable to handle quality of life issues as a sign of a burden reduction opportunity. And last but certainly not least, leveraging technology as a force multiplier. So, currently, again, recruitment and retention being one of our highest priorities and one of our largest challenges. Recruitment and retention is a nationwide challenge. In 2021, we convened a committee to identify best practices in hiring. We have been implementing recommendations from this committee on recruitment and retention. Some of this was a result of hosting a focus group and survey to our officers, which we spoke to before, which also contributed to us going to a 12-hour shift. Additional recruiters and recruitment, which 2 more recruiters have been hired by the New Orleans Police and Justice Foundation. Enhanced burden reduction efforts in an effort to increase officers' morale. We're hopeful some of these recent financial incentives will both be a reason for experienced officers to stay, but also encourage new candidates to apply.
But before you move
Yes,
on,
sir.
we have a question on this particular part of it.
On the-
Councilmember Moreno.
On the previous slide. Perfect, right there.
Yes.
Where it says NOPD is currently staffed with over 1,000 commissioned officers, can you tell me, there seems to be a little bit of a discrepancy because on the New Orleans Police Department demographics dashboard on NOPDnews.org, the number of commissioned officers, at least last time that our analyst checked last week, was at 989.
Yeah, I have to look into that. I've heard you say that before.
Ruh-roh, looks like we got some discrepancies. Maybe you should have updated your PowerPoint, you heard me?
From you where that number came from, but I receive a report every Monday directly from HR, and we have as many as 1,009 or 1,010 commissioned officers alone.
Okay, check your the New Orleans Police Department demographics dashboard. It's the NOPD public-facing dashboard that lists the numbers that I would think would be coming from HR and it's on your website, nopnews.org.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Get your information right, Shaun.
So again, in that same vein, so we do have a class that will be graduating, or we're expected to graduate in September, class 195. Right now, we have 18 recruits within that class. So again, recruitment and retention report from 2021 outlines several areas to focus on. Survey officers to learn their concerns, hire additional recruiters. Lateral hiring is nearly a reality. And I say nearly a reality. We finally were able to finalize our curriculum, which will be a 10-week program, and we'll be announcing this in the very near future for laterals to be hired within the New Orleans Police Department. And we hope to have a lateral class to begin by the end of this year. Step up burden reduction efforts through Hexagon, and again, going back to that deputization of other city employees for quality of life issues. But
hey man, the chat running wild. Somebody said you're giving a PowerPoint up from a window.
Has increased our chances, increased our test takers by 50%, meaning those applicants going from filling out an application to actually taking a test has increased 50%. And I contribute that to those two recruiters, as well as the great staff that we have within recruitment. They're all working collectively. Now, what is unique with this is we're having these additional recruiters from a civilian, a non-commissioned, or a professional perspective. When we have special events, they're not pulled as commissioned officers are to do the job or to be visible, serve as a presence during that special event. These recruiters are still working these phones, working these lines, and trying to hire, get us more employees within our department. So it is a force multiplier when we are able to hire more non-commissioned, or as I would say, professional staffing. Crime. So after seeing an increase, of course, beginning in January, and again, I think the DA said it, and I know we are all very now.
Listen, if this dude is about to tell us about a downward sloping crime model, I'm about to lose
nationally, specifically with regards to violent crime. In January, we saw an increase of 36% in violent crime compared to January of 2021. Since then, we've reduced that to a negative 2% in overall violent crime, although we still have issues and challenges with homicide. The major exception is just that, homicide. Again, not unique to New Orleans, but nationally. There are numerous reasons for higher homicides this year. Social inequities, educational disparities, job disparities. We have made 49 arrests in our homicides so far this year, and in total, 1,656 arrests for violent offenses thus far in 2022. And as you see on this chart, in January, we had an increase in reported violent crimes, and there has been a downward trend up until May every month. And at the bottom of this chart, you see the bar graphs of the blue columns, or the blue bars that reflect the increase in arrests as our violent crimes were going down. Enhanced VCATE, a major tool in the toolbox. I started VCATE October of 2020. And in starting that operation, it was just a partnership between the FBI, State Police, and New Orleans Police Department. We recognized, as a result of the surge we saw in January, that, hey, we need to take advantage of some additional resources, some better partnerships, and build on those partnerships that we have that are outside of this. And that is when we included the ATF, that is when we included the DEA, we included the District Attorney's Office, we included the U.S. Attorney's Office. And as such, we're able to just build out on that enhanced VCATE unit and you begin to see that dip or that decline from February going down on that previous chart. Right now, we build on these partnerships with the District Attorney, and he spoke to the collaboration, the more intentional communication that we have with one another. Another force multiplier we had to add to our toolbox was data analytics. We hired Nathaniel Weaver to run our data analytics unit, and we're starting to reap the benefits of that hiring. We have a small unit, 3 to 4.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? And so, like,
onboarding
here's
two
the thing about
additional
statistics
analysts.
and crime
cyber
data,
attack
and
has
this is
made
one
us
of the
look
biggest
at things
issues that a lot of people have with crime data, is that you can make data and statistics, you know, depends on how the math be mathing.
Actionable intelligence.
You can make it look like anything, and obviously if you stretch that scale out like over a,
and also,
I don't know, but just the idea, again, the downward sloping scale of crime, the math ain't mathing that, dog. Like, I don't really care what numbers you give or whatever it is. Like, you go outside and you hit them chitty chitty bang bangs. Don't nobody care about your statistics, homie.
Can't necessarily say that the 12-hour shift in patrol division is a success yet, but over this last week, we have seen more officers on the street. We have seen more engagement within our community, and we have seen more guns taken off the street over the last week. And again, at the end of the summer, we will assess this. I still would like to call this a pilot program throughout the summer just to determine whether or not this is beneficial to our department. Is it beneficial to our city? And the most important thing, is it beneficial to my officers for their quality of life themselves? Arrests, again, have been made. And we continue to monitor the calls and response time as a result of this 12 hours. We have made close to 300 gun arrests already this year, with over 1,000 guns seized, while in 2021, we had just over 2,000 guns seized throughout the entire year. And in total, we have made over 3,000 arrests for violent crimes and property crimes thus far. Oh, I'm sorry. I think I hit something. There you go. So, in closing, what I will say and ask of you, the council, is for your support of the men and women publicly. They need that. That leads to the morale. That leads to them wanting to continue to fight a good fight for the safety of this city. Work with the leadership of this department directly on ways in which we can be innovative and finding solutions to safeguard our city. Give true consideration to the amendments of the surveillance and tech ordinance. I will honestly say that there's no way any of us as leaders of this department, as members of this department, want to wrongfully arrest or convict anyone. But we need, especially at the time when we're having challenges with staffing, every tool in the toolbox to get the job done. We have, and I know this is not the time, and we're going to have a time later to discuss this, but we have a facial recognition policy that has been approved by the DOJ to ensure those safeguards are in place. And continue to work with us.
Yeah, this is definitely going to be something we're going to hear a lot about for the rest of this meeting, this facial recognition technology.
Better retain.
I'm sure we're going to be hearing from the folks from Eyes on Surveillance about that here.
Because we are hurting there as well. It is real. We're working with our civil service, with the city civil service, to identify ways in which we can retain our professional employees as well, because they aren't getting paid enough. And that is where I need your support as well, to advocate that our lower level employees are being compensated fairly as well, so that we can keep them on board to allow our commissioned officers to do what they were sworn to do, which is to fight crime. So in closing, I just want to thank you for this opportunity to speak to you to what the state of NOPD is today, and I am open to any questions that you may have.
Councilmember Harris, then Councilmember Moreno, and then Councilmember Morrell.
Thank you.
Councilmember Green.
Thank you, Superintendent. I appreciate your words, and you know how I feel about the men and women who serve with NOPD. I think they're critical to our safety. And I, too, and we've discussed recruitment and retention issues. I did want to get back to the number of over 1,000 NOPD officers in your slide. How many officers are assigned to each district?
It varies from district to district, but we're looking at approximately 70 to 80.
Per district?
Per district, yes, ma'am. And a part of that assessment with the 12-hour shift, thank you for that question. Part of that assessment with the 12-hour shift, we are using true data through our data analytics unit to determine if that is appropriate for each district. That is something I am looking at changing towards the end of the summer after we complete our assessment with this 12-hour shift, as well as the appropriate number of detectives, not just in the districts, but in homicide, I think there's some opportunities there in which we can shift, we can pivot some of our detective resources into more a centralized position.
Great. How many patrol men or women are in each district? Do you know?
That's
Meaning how many patrols per shift, per 12-hour shift?
So what we average prior to the 12 on the 8-hour shift, we average maybe 4 or 5 on 3 to 5 a day shift. In each district right now, we're averaging approximately 9 to 10 on a 12-hour shift.
Captain Bax is in the 6th district, and my understanding is a lot of times his officers have to assist with car crashes on the overpass. How has state police stepped in, or have they, to assist with those crashes? Because we're literally taking patrolmen off the street to assist with car wrecks on a state-owned highway.
So that has been a constant challenge for LSP as well as NOPD. We've had these conversations over and over again. I mean, they assist with a lot with us, with our VCATE, with our Operation Golden Eagle, and other things that we have going on. So they have not been able to assist. We made the ask, and Colonel Davis, I could tell you, every time we've asked him something, he's been pretty accommodating, but when it comes to this, we have not been able to get that assistance on the interstate. And this is well beyond myself. This is beyond Colonel Davis's administration as well. This is something that has been historic in the city of New Orleans for whatever reason.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me. It probably doesn't make much sense to you. Do you have any cooperative endeavor agreements with the university police, Tulane, Xavier,
Yes,
Loyola?
Tulane for sure. On the record, we have an agreement with Tulane that extends a little bit beyond their campus to where their students are residing in the 2nd district as well as in the 8th district where the hospital is.
And what about Loyola and Xavier? And I'm asking
not a cooperative endeavor agreement to that degree, but where when we can work together, we should work together. We have that with them as well as SUNO, but not to the level of expanding outward. Again, they are very small and restricted, limited in nature with regards to resources as well.
I'm happy to get you in touch with Chief Todd Warren over at Loyola.
I talk to Todd at least once or twice a month.
Yeah. And he's eager to actually help out at Loyola. When we talk about the 12-hour shifts, how many of the quote-unquote white shirts are on 12-hour shifts? The supervisors.
I'm sorry.
The supervisors are also doing the 12-hour shift.
Every officer from patrolman to sergeant to lieutenant that is on the patrol assignment are assigned to 12-hour shift.
Do you have any supervisors that actually go out to investigate or respond to any calls for service?
Yes, you have the sergeants and lieutenants who will back up the officers when necessary on these calls for services. That is part of our policy, that when officers are out there, supervisors are out there with them as well.
Are the captains ever assisting?
Captains are not. For the most part, captains are really kind of restricted because of their administrative duties, a lot of the administrative duties that they have, a lot of the community engagement meetings that they have to attend and things of that nature. If they have the free time, they definitely have the opportunity to do so by choice.
So I guess back to the question of the over 1,000 officers that we have, how many are really administrative officers who don't respond to calls for service?
Of the 1,000, I would say this: 60% of our department is in field operations.
Okay.
So that's 60%, meaning that is where the districts are, as well as special operations. Of that 60%, I would venture to say in the districts itself, we should have at least 500 or so that are in the districts that are working. Now, of course, within each district, you have your detectives that are assigned on person crimes, property crimes, and that's why we're assessing whether that need is there to have all of those detectives in certain districts, or would they be better utilized to be a part of maybe special victim sections, or better utilized as a part of homicide?
Councilmember Thomas, or Chair Thomas, and I had a good discussion yesterday about hotspots and patrolling hotspots. Without giving away what you all do you actually survey the hotspots that are reported to our offices?
I can tell you this: every day every district captain is reviewing their crime trends to identify where patterns exist so they can redeploy as necessary.
Okay. I'm sure I will have some follow-up questions, but I'll cede my time right now.
Councilmember Moreno.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
So I'm going to follow up on some of the points that Councilmember Harris made because I'd like for you to elaborate a little bit more. We were going down the right path. I think you and I can agree that you can't run an NOPD or a business that's made for roughly 1,400 police officers or individuals the same way when you've got, let's say, roughly 1,000, whether it's just over or just under. You briefly started to mention some of the consolidation efforts that you are considering, which I would be very much in support of. So tell me a little bit more about the potential of consolidating detectives, the potential of consolidating precincts. What are you looking at? What could we see, and what does that planning work entail for you?
Thank you for that question. So I have not considered consolidating districts per se or precincts per se, but opportunities I think exist when we talk about detectives. Look at some of the districts and the level of investigation or the number of cases that they're obtaining or assigned. We could possibly use them in other areas as opposed to in that district area. I've also gone to civil service to advocate and ask for, and they've supported civilianizing or professional investigators, meaning from a non-commissioned capacity, with child abuse, special victim section, public integrity bureau, things of that nature. So we're looking for opportunities where we can.
It's a very long way
do a better job
to not answer the
utilizing our commissioned personnel out in the field where they're needed to address violent crime.
That's an excellent point, too, and I want to get to that in a second, but let's stick with the consolidation piece at this point. Why not look at the potential of consolidating precincts? I mean, I take a look at the, for example, the 2nd and the 6th, and encompassing roughly the downtown.
And just for a heads up, this council meeting, this special meeting has been going on for a little over 3 hours now.
To take people out of a building and instead put them out on the street, and everyone could report to, I would assume maybe the 2nd because that's a newer building. Why not take a look at that strategy?
Because I see it as it is the same geographical area. So why not allow these officers who own this area now, and I mean own it like they own it, but own it, they've taken responsibility for patrolling and serving this community. Why take them out of that area? I think when we have them split the way that they are, it is more intentional. There's a better community relationship between that district and the community in which they're serving. When we start consolidating districts, I think we're starting to, you may take a little bit away from that community. So now this captain is not only dealing with 20 neighborhood associations now, he or she may be dealing with 40, and that's just that to me, I just don't see the engagement. I don't see the positive engagement or efficient or effective engagement between that captain or that leader of that district and the neighborhoods in which they're serving.
Yeah, I think I see it a little bit differently because I think right now what people are really concerned about is response times for calls for service. And I think they're looking for more officers on the street. I think in a perfect world, it would be great to have as many officers as possible doing community engagement, but we are certainly not in a perfect world right now, especially with the number of police officers that we have in our city. So I would think that it would be beneficial to really prioritize response times and calls for service and maybe getting more officers out on the street. And that's why I was really focusing in on the potential of consolidating precincts. I would ask that you just that you consider it and look at it and do a pro and con analysis of it.
Absolutely. I don't mind doing that, but the way I look at it, we do in fact prioritize response time, and we've seen it dip about 8% over the last week as a result of the 12-hour shifts. And we also have what we call is a geographical deployment, where our officers are assigned to certain sectors. And that still exists, although we pivoted from an 8-hour shift to a 12-hour shift. So those officers have taken ownership again of that particular sector, that particular neighborhood in which they're serving. And that helps reduce, of course, response time unless something significant happened that would draw us away from those geographical deployment assignments. But we're actually better, we're able to serve use that geographical deployment better now because we have more officers on the street than we had when we were able to do it on an 8-hour shift.
Mm-hmm. How many officers are usually in a building, let's say manning a precinct, that are there, to get people who are coming in and?
During the day, you have the desk officer. You may have the captain doing his or her administrative duties. A case officer, which is an arrest case officer who deals with the district attorney, and your detectives and your district district sergeant as well, the administrative sergeant. That's about it. There aren't many officers that just like hanging in the district, just waiting to respond to someone as they are coming in for a need.
Yeah. I think we're just to the point where it's like we need to not just focus just on consolidating community engagement, but really consolidating the response to crime. And even if it means putting 2 or 3 more officers out on the street at a given time, I think it all makes a difference as far as responses go. But let me pivot and talk to the civilianization of
one thing that you got to understand about what Helena Moreno was just asking is that if we consolidate districts, that would take the amount of officers that are spread out all throughout the city. It would be the same amount of officers, but it would just be a higher concentration in each area.
On the national news about Baltimore moving in that direction, and it's actually our former chief that's working on that. So I appreciate both of you all looking at that particular aspect. But right now, for alternative police responses, meaning having civilians do this type of work, it seems that there's only, from what I understand in a report that our data analyst Jeff Asher just put out today, it shows that there's only really, 7 categories for alternative police response. And are you looking at potentially expanding that?
Yes, I'm not sure what Jeff Asher is pulling up, but I mean, there are many types of reports in which we could take over the phone or online, from thefts to miscellaneous incidents to criminal damage. There are numerous categories in which they are. And actually, speaking to this APR unit right now, is currently under field operations. We are about to transition it to be under Management Service Bureau to be more of a support mechanism tied into our record room. So these reports are taken and then filtered right into the record room immediately. But there are numerous reports. I think the problem that we're having and the challenges that we are facing within that unit is, one, it is staffed by low-level or low-paid employees that we have. That's, again, I ask for your assistance in trying to work with civil service to increase the pay for many of our employees, as well as limited duty officers as well. So the capacity can fluctuate from time to time, especially given that we're dealing with limited duty employees.
And I appreciate you bringing that up about civilian pay, and that's certainly something I'd like to work with you on, because that's key. We always talk about police officer pay, but you do have a large civilian part of your department, and I definitely want to work with you on that. Explain to me this. So let's say if Helena's car, unfortunately, gets stolen right in front of my house. Okay? I call NOPD. Can you all send a civilian to come and take my police report?
A civilian, I have not considered. We can actually take that over the phone. We can take that report over the phone without sending anyone to your location. And then a detective would then obtain or retrieve that report and do a follow-up to determine if there is any evidence or anything like that that they can follow up on. But I wouldn't even have to send a civilian there. I could actually take that over the phone.
And online. Couldn't I do that online?
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that is something that is certainly not promoted enough by the NOPD. Mm-hmm. The fact that, people are calling the police department and wanting a commissioned officer to come to their home to take this report. That is a complete waste of time of officers, very limited time.
I agree wholeheartedly, and I will ask, I'm sorry if I interrupted you, but
no,
I go back to what Councilmember Harris gave an example of LSP assisting on the interstate. We have on-scene services that assist with handling car crashes for us, but we've been to the state on numerous occasions asking to change the law to allow non-commissioned personnel to take police reports or auto crash reports on the streets of New Orleans or throughout the state of Louisiana. And again, that has been denied. So I ask you all, as former representatives of the state, if you can help push that for us to. That, I think, would alleviate a lot of the pressure that we have, so we can build that program out as well.
But so let's go back to when Helena calls about her stolen car, okay? Mm-hmm. So I call about my stolen car, and because we hear it all the time, and we get complaints that there'll be car break-ins, things like that happen, and people are mad because an NOPD officer didn't show up for, let's say, more than 24 hours. Okay. What type of instruction is being given to the people who are calling to say, we would like for you to report this over the phone, or we would like for you to report this online?
So we've done some, I guess you would say, campaigning, a marketing campaign with regards to just trying to push that out. I think we could definitely do a better job at pushing out what can be done. Actually, our public information office just recently had a meeting to discuss how could they promote the APR unit better. So we're just going to refocus on that. We also have a policy in place, just using that example, the 24-hour example. We have a policy in place in operations that any call that's held over an hour you should receive a call from the desk officer or a supervisor to confirm, one, that a physical response is needed, or is it something that we can be done taken over the phone, or online.
Because now you just we have to just focus much more strongly on getting that message out, because we're just at that type of an emergency point where our officers can't be spending hours at a time because of my car getting stolen from in front of the house. There's nothing that I really can do except hopefully give you some footage coming from the crime cameras, and put in a police report at that time, and a civilian could certainly do that. And so actively promoting that, I think, is really important. Let's talk about. I do want to talk about the accidents, the car accidents, because, and I do support having a third party take the police reports on the car accidents, and from what I understand, the police reports are then submitted to NOPD for review and things like that. I think that that's smart. But the firm that we're using currently responds to only 2.5% of the non-injury car accidents in the city. And I do believe that we're going to work on a proposal to increase that, which I think is good. But let's drastically increase it. Let's not just double it to, now have it be 5%. Let's figure out a path to really beef that up.
Yes.
And let me just say this. Look, don't get me wrong, and I think it's important to support businesses, but also we should take a look at whether we should be hiring our own civilians to be able to respond to these accidents, and take a look at a cost-benefit analysis as to whether we need to be hiring, outside private business to do this for us, or whether we should be doing this in-house.
No, I agree. We've had these conversations with Ethan about expanding, and like I said, not just doubling, holding it, taking over every car crash when at all possible, of course, without injury.
I know you can't go on the interstates.
Yes, and they can't go on the interstates, yes. But at least those that are out on the streets of New Orleans, that could still be a burden reduction for our officers.
The request to the state police about patrolling the interstates, you specifically made that request to the superintendent?
Yes, I talk to Colonel Davis almost every week. Yeah. Every week. So yes, I specifically spoke to him about it, and they just did not have the capacity the last time we spoke. And again, this is they just started their first class in over 2 or 3 years back in December. So no, he just did not have the capacity at that time, because as we're making that ask, others are making the same ask.
Yeah. Do you know if the mayor has specifically made the ask to the governor?
I'm not sure if she made an ask to the governor. I know that Colonel Davis and I have a great relationship. I don't know if I've ever had to arise it to that level.
Okay.
But I do know, I do know that there has been a conversation about with the governor and the colonel as to whether, what can actually be done. And they're strained. They're limited or restricted on resources just as we are.
I just think that it should rise to every level at this point. I think everybody should be demanding and making the ask and trying to apply pressure where we are. I mean, with the shootings that we're seeing on the interstates, with the amount of time that officers are spending on interstates just dealing with wrecks and disabled vehicles, our officers, I mean, it just doesn't make sense. Even if it was DPS, even if DPS showed up to respond to disabled vehicles and accidents, that would be a
Yes, do
cost.
that in a certain on Puncher Train, U.S. Puncher Train. They do
That's the thing, man. It's like you see the council trying to present logical solutions and all of this, and then there's always, oh well, yeah, you know, yeah.
The district attorney. I mean, it's just. I think we've all ran into the same.
Yeah, and I think the message that we've received is that, with all due respect, not any single person up here is the mayor of this city,
Right.
Nor is the district attorney. And I think that that level of request is something that, from what I'm understanding, needs to come from the highest level.
Understood.
Yeah. So if you can pass that message along, that would be.
Basically, tell your boss to bring the people down here because we tired of it.
I know you're working on a program to allow for lateral transfers. How is that program developing? When do you think it'll be in use? Because I've sent you emails and about how, I know some folks from other police departments that have wanted to come over, but they are like, look, I've been in another law enforcement agency for quite some time. I don't want to go all the way through the NOPD Academy to become a New Orleans police officer.
So I will commend Deputy Chief Lawrence Dupree to my right. He and I spoke about this some months ago, and he hit the ground running. He worked with the Department of Justice. He worked with our federal monitors. And we just, within the last few weeks, finalized a curriculum, a 10-week curriculum for lateral programs. So we are about to go on a marketing campaign to do just that. And we hope by the end of the year, and I said that in my presentation, by the end of the year, we hope to have had a lateral program implemented at the New Orleans Police Department. It has been a challenge. We had to navigate a lot. I think we can attribute a lot of that to our compliance with the consent decree. You know that the state...
I mean, that is good news. I mean, I do know that is one of the things that have held the police back, is this idea of, like, you got people coming in at certain ranks, and then they got to, like, go back down to a rank in order to get into the NOPD, which doesn't make any sense, but it is what it is. It's just making it impossible for good police officers to be here.
Okay. No, I think that's good, because I'll tell you this, the officers who I spoke to are seeing on the news information about the potential of what Councilmember Harris has proposed on the 2% raises, what the mayor has proposed on the bonuses, and they're like, hey, maybe this is a good opportunity. And some of these individuals are originally from the city, so they're familiar from being in New Orleans. But it was such a drawback for them to have to go through an entire academy all over again when they've been part of another law enforcement agency for quite some time.
I do understand that from a commission standpoint myself. I do understand.
So I very much appreciate that. That's really good news. And then finally, my last question, and I'll turn it over. I think Councilmember Morrell is next. The really boosting of crisis response teams. I know that that Health Director of EGNO has been working on that. It's been operating as a pilot in one particular precinct. But what is the work that's being done to really boost this citywide so that these teams can really be effective in being deployed all around the city, and that'll also reduce commissioned officers from having to respond to a lot of these times?
So I would say this, I received some pushback initially about this, meaning internally within my department. Yeah. I'm a strong advocate for doing just this, having that civilianized subject matter expert professional response to that, not necessarily a police officer response to these types of calls. So we are in conversation with Dr. Vegno as well as Director Morris of the Communication Division to expand that. I know I can't give you the exact state of it at this very moment. I can follow up with you, but it's to my understanding, I know Dr. Vegno was addressing some funding issues, but I am in very much support of expanding that. That is another burden reduction initiative that I see for the department.
So let's get together on the funding pieces, and I'll reach out to Dr. Avegno as well, because as you know, we're in mid-year now, and we'll be approaching, 2023 budget season right around the corner. So let's figure out these pieces, because every one of these situations that can be responded to by one of these crisis teams is a commissioned officer or officers that can remain on the street for calls for service.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilmember Moreno. Morrell. I'm sorry, Morrell. Eminem.
Eminem, all right. Thank you, Chief, for being here today. Get a little closer to my mic. I guess I want to start. So I guess listening to the first part of your presentation, your position is that that crime and our response is trending in the right direction.
Right now, yes. I mean, we still have our challenges with homicide. Don't get me wrong. We are absolutely having some issues when it comes to homicide, but when it comes to the overall picture of violent crime, we have been seeing a downward trends.
Okay, well, I guess, and I'm sure this won't be the only point in which we probably agree to disagree. I think we'll probably have a lot of those today.
I'm sure.
Let me pull up this data real quick for you. According to our statistician of year to date, and most statisticians do not use January.
Give it a second. Again, the council feed, it does tend to have this in and out situation. Hopefully
to June. They use June to June because you want to use a whole year to follow data trends. So year to date, armed robbery is up 31%, carjacking's up 6%, homicide incidents using firearms is up 40%, stabbings are up 16, almost 17%, and homicide incidents non-firearm, not stabbing are up 22%. I guess from my perspective, because I mean, I think when you talk to the public,
basically, where you got your numbers from, Shaun?
People are not afraid.
That's what people want to know, man. Where you get your numbers from? Because
to leave their houses because their handle got jiggled. That's not something that makes them not have their kid play on their lawn. It's homicide and it's violent crime.
Yes.
And I think that a good point for us to start an agreement is that we have a violent crime problem in this city. Is that true?
We have a violent crime problem in this nation.
Okay, I appreciate that.
And in city.
Okay, there you go. Thank you. So we agree. We got a violent crime problem in the city. When we talk about murder in particular, that's the thing the public focuses on. According to the data that we have, we are trending as of now, without change, that we will have more murders this year than previous years.
Possibly so. I want to ask you a question. You said something about how are you all looking at this from June of last year to June of this year?
Yep, year to date. So the thing is that whenever we are pulling data, we're pulling it over a full year period because
there lies a problem. So when I speak to crime, and this has always been the case for any police agency, and as long as I've been a member of this department, we've always counted the year itself. January 1 of 2022 to whatever date we are today, June 15 of 2022. We compare that same to January 1 of 2021 to June.
You getting just he in a pinch.
That's why we have these
just using homicide year to date. We are trending higher this year than any year since the 1990s.
Possibly so. I have not looked that far back. I won't say that. Not come on now. 1990s. We're looking at 1990s. You had as many as 400 homicides. We're not trending that high. We're not trending that high.
Okay. Well,
134 homicides today.
I mean, it's crazy because it's like JP's coming with straight facts, asking simple questions, and here you go.
That would be 268.
I will correct myself.
Yes, sir.
I think that, and we could probably agree on this, the number of homicides is not the same. If you use the number of homicides per population, it is the same. So the number is not going to be as high because in the 1990s we had 100,000 more people. But if you're looking at, I think when you're looking at the way people describe the homicide number, it is more likely you will be killed this year than it was in a comparable year previously in the 90s in the population as general.
I don't agree with that, but that's yours.
Okay. That's I mean, that's not. I hate.
Brad, that's
I don't want to become the data nerd because that is Councilmember Harris's title, but this is not my opinion. This is based upon data. Now, I do note that we have some data discrepancies. especially when it comes to things like the number of officers you have, maybe some of the crime stats. And I think that is directly because we have not gotten direct crime stats from the police department since 2019.
Yes.
All of our data is coming through your public data.nopd.org dashboard.
Yes.
However, you have an internal statistician. I don't know why we're not getting data real time.
So, I mean, first it starts with a conversation.
Real-time data. Real-time data.
The real time, but we've had issues again with regards to the cyber attack. So that is why now we have, again, Nathaniel.
Here we go. Cyber attacks, hard rock, COVID.
And on the hexagon to get this record management system together so that we can put a public-facing dashboard that will be in real time. So that is something in progress that we're working on now.
I think what might help both of us is that we will make the request to get the data in real time, because I think that if we're operating on the same agreed upon set of facts, then we can have a more direct conversations versus us looking at what's on the public facing dashboard, which is the calls for service, not exactly what you have. But we'll make that formal request, because I think that might resolve some of the disagreements we have on how data is interpreted. Now, I guess this is something that's very peculiar to me. I know we've switched to 12-hour shifts, but we have not switched to how many hours per week officers work. Is that correct? An officer's work week, how many hours does an officer work in a work week?
So the way we count it, we're looking at ensuring that they meet that number of hours in the pay period, which is, I think, 171. I forgot the exact number, but it's about the 2-week pay period. It's not so much within the week. And what we're doing is ensuring that the officers do not exceed 3 work days in a row, so that they can be rested.
The challenge I have with math is, even if we go to 12-hour shifts, if officers are working in total the same amount of hours, that means that during certain times, because of certain times of the day,
JP, like the math ain't mathing. The math ain't mathing.
You rotate 12-hour shifts, there are going to be times where there's less. Is that correct?
I mean, given off days, given training, they're gonna have some anomalies. I'm not quite understanding what you're saying.
Oh, now it's gonna be anomalies. Now it's anomalies.
Let's use a 40-hour work week as an example. I'm not saying that's how many hours you have, because I don't know how many hours you have. But if you have, 40-hour work week, and you can only work 40 hours in a work week, and someone can stretch that as 8 hours per day across the entire work week. Well, if you switch that person to 12 hours shifts, they're working less days in that week.
Yes.
Right. So my point being that if we've switched to 12-hour shifts, but the amount of hours in the work week have not changed, that means you're going to have peaks and valleys when officers are available.
When you say the work week has not changed, what work? Because now you consolidated all your officers and split them to 2 different shifts, and now they have a A and B platoon even within that one shift, where every other weekend off, opposite of one another.
I think even in this conversation we're having right now, I think that there is a definite need for more data. Right now, your deployment slide just says 12-hour shifts. Doesn't say how platoons are split, doesn't say how that goes down to the district level, doesn't give us any of the actual data on deployment change other than 12-hour shifts.
Oh, that's easy. I have that.
Okay, well then we'll that kind of answers a couple of questions I have on that slide, because I mean, obviously, when you're talking about deployment strategies, I think the council president's point, when I talk to law enforcement agencies across our state, across our region, across our state, and across our country, a consistent line through all of them is that in times of crisis, everyone responds. And I'll use that as an example. I'm very, very close friends with Joseph Lapinto, who is the sheriff of Jefferson Parish. He'll be the first one to tell you that if he's driving home and there's a call for service, he'll respond to it. If it's on his route, he stops and does it. I don't think the public feels like, and we haven't been given sufficient data to show that we are at an all hands on deck situation with NOPD. I know that you have a lot of people that are commissioned officers in administrative roles, and that's necessary to some extent. But when you have a manpower shortage, and we all agree, the number we may not agree on, we agree as a manpower shortage. And I think if you have a significant manpower shortage, it's especially important to the public that needs to feel protected and needs to know that you're doing everything possible, that it's an all hands on deck moment. And I think that it's something that a conversation a lot of council members have had. Everyone needs to be responding to calls for service.
And I don't know if I misled you, but that we are like on all hands on deck everywhere that we can. We have a lot of administrative responsibilities with regards to reporting data, be it crime, administrative data, or whatever, consent decree, whatever. We have a lot of responsibilities. So every which way in which we can put an officer out there to respond, we have done just that. And again, this 3-month trial period, the 12-hour shifts, is also giving us this opportunity to assess every aspect, meaning detectives, everything that we're doing. So, but we do take this very seriously, and we're doing the very best that we can with everything that we have.
If the challenge is the consent decree,
I'm not saying the consent decree is the challenge. I'm saying the result of some of our reforms, there are a lot more responsibility that the New Orleans Police Department has compared to other agencies, such as Jefferson Parish.
And I'm not disagreeing
reporting
with
wise.
But what I'm saying is that the challenge, for example, if there's a reporting requirement in the consent decree that requires a commissioned officer generate the report, then this council, which I know our legal person, Adam, is somewhere, if that's a concern, why don't we go to the monitor and just say, why can't we have civilians doing the reporting that a commissioned officer doesn't have to do? I mean, it's data input.
So let me explain it this way. It's not so much that it requires a commission. We're working with what we have until we can hire. Part of the civilianization thing also is hiring auditors as well as managers within the professional standards and accountability to handle these reports and things of that nature until we are able, and we made that request and been given the approval for at least one additional auditor, until we are able to fill these positions. All we have are the commissioned officers to do the job that is needed to be done at this time.
Well, I think what would be helpful to us, because I mean, when we have other departments in front of us, it could be as someone, safety and permits to the district attorney, they give us specificity as what they need. If your goal is, and I think it's a laudable goal, to increase civilian presence in the office, and you're looking for roles to fill in that capacity, we don't need slides that say we're trying to hire, we have 200 civilians, we're trying to hire 100 more. It needs to be, we need 100 positions that are civilians at these pay ranks, at these levels, these specific people, because you don't have a council that doesn't want to provide you resources, but we need specificity so that we can have the internal and external debates as far as, triaging that need. I mean, I will tell you, in my estimation, there is a lot of opportunity. I mean, just look at former Police Chief Harrison in Baltimore right now. And he's dealing with consent decree problems as well. He just was celebrated on national television for the complete civilian expansion of the Baltimore Police Department. He is at every opportunity. If I could have a civilian doing a job that a commissioned officer is currently doing, I'm putting a civilian in that role. And because of that, he's been able to get more officers on the street, directly interfacing with the public. And
so there's a solution that clearly works. It's happening right now. It's being put out there. So let's see the chief's response.
Consent decrees, the legal maneuvering around a consent decree often comes down to arguments, where you have to argue your position against the Justice Department regarding the political realities of what you're dealing with right now versus the idyllic world they think you should operate in. And if there are instances in which this council can be an ally in arguing that we need to have more civilianization to allow more officers to be on the street, we're more than willing to do it. We just need to know what we're arguing.
So what I need to say right now is that I apologize if I did not give you specifics, but I can tell you I spoke, y'all were up there talking, but I spoke to various positions in which I was saying that we are trying to civilianize. We have worked with civil service and been granted authority or the power to hire in these various positions. I didn't give you any specific numbers to that regard, but I spoke to just what you're asking of me now.
I heard that part, and I think for us, like when we had the district attorney's plan, he specifically named, I need this screener, I need this division, we need that. So,
Gotcha.
I get that you're working on these topics, but it makes it easier for us to help you if we have specific data.
Basically, the DA came there to get something, and the police chief came there with talking points.
The more of your plan we know and we can articulate, the more we're all in a position to say, here's the plan, here's how it's being rolled out. And honestly, looking at the slides, there's just not enough specificity in them.
Yeah, I agree with you out there. I did not be specific enough, I guess, for what you're asking of now, but I am totally interested and agree that we should be working together, and not on this stage, not in public eye, but behind the scenes about what can we do collectively to make.
Why do they always want to take stuff behind the scenes? No, the public needs to see and deserves to see.
This is kind of my position. I think that the more we have these conversations in public, the more you rebuild public trust.
Oh, I'm not saying that. We've been the most transparent department of all.
Stop it.
Accusing you of that. What I'm saying is that if you were able to provide us specific data on the positions, and we had budget hearings about the specific positions, that is a way we inform the public the positions are necessary. I personally don't need to approve of or even have oversight over your plan. I need to be able to look at your plan and ask the questions the public wants to ask about how this plan is being deployed. And those are the kind of conversations we need to have at meetings like this. I mean, hopefully not as long a meeting and maybe not with as many people involved, because obviously you're in the middle of a meeting that still has hours to go. But I think that having these conversations
Lord have mercy,
really goes a long way to making the public feel like they are being heard, that there's a sense of urgency to resolve these problems. My last question for right now, like the data nerd, Councilmember Harris, I reserve the right to ask future questions, but I think it's really important. I further want to emphasize council president's position on how we do deployment and how we have districts. I think that our population has shifted dramatically within the city. I think that the old district model really contemplates 1,500 officers. I'll be candid, and I've said this publicly, we could have the best recruitment team on earth. We're never going to get back to 1,500 officers because it's supply and demand, and there's not enough law enforcement professionals in the country to meet demand. We'll be lucky if we get to 1,200. And that being said, I think that 1,200 officers is going to require a radically different deployment model. And I think the sooner we can have a public-facing representation of what that radically different deployment number looks like, it would really give everybody up here, as well as the public, comfort knowing that we're going to acknowledge, I mean, that 1,500 number, I want to say was 2014 or 2015 was the last time I was at that level.
1,500? That's pre-Katrina. That's Katrina time.
I want to say, I'll get the number for you, but it's been a significant amount of time since we've had that number. I think that our deployment strategy really has to reflect we're never going to hit that number again. And I think it's a real disservice when people go to the public and represent that if we did some kind of magic recruitment strategy, you could have 1,500 people this year, next year, or in future years. You know, because of how competitive the marketplace is, it's going to be hard with the best strategy you possibly have to climb out the hole we're in to get to a number that's going to be feasible. But I think if we can work together to have a public-facing, transparent position on what the new deployment strategy will be, it would do a lot to rebuild public confidence.
Well, I mean, I don't know about building public confidence because I don't think we lost it that much, but I will say this, and hearing what you're saying, I can definitely take consideration into
Did
that.
you hear him just say that they haven't lost public confidence?
Thomas's
You're a wild boy.
constituents. I hear something totally different where they're asking us to split the districts. So I have to take everything into consideration.
Well, and I think part of the challenge is that we've had so many things we've done in the past, some that worked, some that didn't. We had substations that worked in some places that didn't, that I think even when you're talking to the public, they don't understand necessarily how deployment works.
Yo, so look, peep game, I gotta go pick up my car from the shop. I'm gonna keep the stream going. When I get back, we'll keep it going, but I'll keep the stream up for y'all.
For all of Gentilly, Lakeview, and Parr, New Orleans East, and Uptown's Guy District, that's, 13, 14 blocks. And I think that we haven't had a substantial public conversation on why that was the case and why it's still the case, and that we might need to change that dramatically going forward. I mean, the East is a gigantic geographic piece of land.
Yep.
And I think that part of the reason why you hear that split model is that's really more of an argument about calls for service. They're saying that if we had 2 precincts, we'd have faster calls for service. Well, if you don't have more officers and you have you create more districts with the same amount of officers, and you have to create all the staff to staff the new district, it might make the calls for the service worse. It just depends. But the more we can have those public conversations about what those different deployment strategies are and what the result would be of them, I think it will make people have more informed decisions. I mean, I think substations are not a far gone conclusion. I think civilian staff substations would be very helpful in that people would have somewhere, if they want to self-report a crime, where they could go and someone could take that, and that wouldn't take an officer you have off the street to take it. Because I think in a lot of jurisdictions, they move towards that. The reporting of a crime is data entry. You're not making a case as to whether the crime occurred. You're just saying, somebody said on this day at this time this happened, someone go investigate at some point depending on the severity of the crime. I think we need to have more of those conversations. Thank you.
Before Councilmember Green add context to some of maybe the historical conversation, there were studies in the past from the business community and law enforcement advocates that talked about New Orleans having a 2,000 member police force. That was pre-Katrina. Pre the Pennington plan, the numbers for those who convened, it was 1,700 police officers. Then they amended it down to 1,600, and I don't ever think we ever reached the 1,600. It was 1,500 or so. And to also add some context to the per capita discussion about crime. First of all, thank you, Chief, because you've stated time and time again that any life lost is too many. But it's kind of like to compare what happened then, those 15 or 16 years of murder from high 200, 300 to 400 to now, it was a difference in population. New Orleans population, however, it would go back and forth during that decade between 497 and about 503. It's 391,000 now. But for you, and doing the math in my little mind, if you would take the highest number of murders then and multiply it by the population, you would get about 0.0848%. But just to understand now, and I think it gives context to how people feel now, if you would multiply that highest incidence of murder, where it's trending right now, it would be about 0.1804, which would statistically mean that you are definitely more likely to get shot or murdered, given the violence that's happening on our street today. So that's just in just comparing those areas. Right. Even though we have less people right now, the way the amount of shootings and violence is trending, statistically, it says you're more likely to be a victim today.
Yep.
Thank you. Councilmember Green.
Thank you, Chief and officers of the law, for being present today. I just want to start off by, for the public who is watching, thanking you all for the work that you do. I am pleased with what I have seen relative to the response to the consent decree. Judge Susie Morgan announced just recently that the police department has made substantial compliance and that we will soon be potentially coming out of the consent decree. Also, we got a decision from the Justice Department relative to an ordinance that may assist the police, that ordinance could be followed because the police have done a good job. I want to thank you also for the work that you do, and I have been involved with calls where they might have been police involvement. Unfortunately, I've seen too much and have been involved with too much. I was not officially carjacked because I didn't see the gun. However, my car was taken by someone who had a gun. Immediate police response, and I appreciate it. I've been to neighborhood meetings where I've had to tell the residents, you all are giving us examples of the fact that police have made arrests in your community. What you're looking for is more cooperation from the Justice Department, the criminal justice system, to make things happen. So before I ask just a couple of questions, because other questions have been answered, I just want to thank you all for the work that you do. And for the people who are watching, joining the New Orleans Police Department is a great thing to do. It's a noble profession. Join NOPD. Org is a place to go where jobs pay benefits and they pay significant salary, and you do noble work for the citizens of New Orleans, and you are greatly appreciated. That's what we need to say more often to get people to not only apply, but to also take the civil service exam, because your work will be appreciated by the citizens, also the elected officials of this city. So I really appreciate the work that you do. Members of your department came to a community meeting the other night in the fairgrounds and stayed around, very honestly, longer than I would have stayed around. You all answered all of the questions that needed to be answered. You provided good information, and we know that we have work to do in our city. What I'd like to do is to appeal to people who are engaging in criminal activity to recognize that the police department, and you've heard the district attorney's office saying that they are responsive to it. Why do people want to do the things that are wrong that potentially get you in prison, get you with fines, or get you with records that last you all the time? I encourage our citizens who are engaged in that activity to please recognize that there are consequences and that there are eyes watching you. I have a question because I have eight high schools in my district, and I appreciate that fact. It does keep me busy. I try to go there as often as I can. But can you talk about the Cadet Academy and how the 8 high schools of my district and throughout this city could benefit from having a Cadet Academy? What can we do to get more participants so that they can later on after high school, maybe by age 20 or 21, be able to apply and become members of the department?
Thank you for that question, Counsel. So Lieutenant Merrill Merricks, who is over our recruitment division for the New Orleans Police Department, is currently working with our community engagement as well as staff at MLK school down in the Lower Ninth Ward to come up with just that, a type of a curriculum, a program that would offer something to our youth to be interested in this profession. And we want to start there and build out, but we want to establish what that would look like so we can continue to build, to show that this is, as you said, an honorable profession. So we're working with that school now to see what that would look like going into the new school year. And as soon as we are able to finalize that, I'm more than willing to share with all of y'all to see what opportunities exist that we could build out on this.
Thank you very much for that response. And I look forward to working with you, as I know the council would, on that Cadet Academy. We have got to get more youth interested in law enforcement as a profession when they graduate from school. The funny thing is many of them go away and then eventually become involved with law enforcement in other areas, not because they didn't want to become so here, but sometimes they don't know about opportunities. I would work with you strongly to provide opportunities for persons graduating from the high schools of our city to go immediately into some sort of Cadet Academy.
And that is the key. I think we work with Delgado as well to try to put together a curriculum that would keep them focused on that path. And even if it's not New Orleans Police Department, a public safety path, maybe you can become a firefighter, or you can be a firefighter until you're able to be a police officer. But we're talking about that now, a joint curriculum, a public safety curriculum to keep our youth engaged so that they can become the next firefighter, EMS, or police officer.
In February, the council chose to take on as its first hearings crime in our city. And it was important, and it continues to be important every day. We've had 16 murders in the past 2 weeks or something like that. I mean, of course, we always focus on murders, but there's a lot of other things that are going on in the city. What would you say to the citizens of New Orleans in terms of working with the NOPD to make our city our city safer?
Well, what I would like to say to the community is that we are doing our very best every day to address the violent crime. We're working with our state and federal partners as well as our local partners, meaning the district attorney's office and others throughout our business community, our residents, our faith-based leaders. But we have to do a better job as a community. When the days of, it's unheard of, the days of bringing a gun to a graduation as opposed to balloons or flowers or cards to congratulate someone on a significant moment in their lives. We have to look at what is it that we're doing, what is our mentality as a society right now. But nevertheless, as these crimes occur, we have to do our job as the police department. Hopefully, we like to prevent it first and foremost. And it's hard to really quantify how much we actually prevent by putting our officers out there in these geographical deployments. But once it occurs, it is our duty to try to, we do our hardest to ensure that we are able to solve these matters once they have been, once these violations have occurred.
Can you talk about to the public, if you see it, report it? I went to the meeting the other night and people said, 2 days ago I saw somebody doing something and then I called the police. Or I didn't call the police right away because I couldn't because I was driving by and I was on the phone. Could you talk about the value of reporting the crimes immediately?
The biggest thing, thank you. The biggest thing is, it's, if you see something, say something, no matter how minute you may think it is. What I've seen recently, a lot of our citizens, they would get on next door neighbor or something like that. Of course, it is absolutely important to share with your neighbors what you've seen so they can be on the lookout. But bring it to law enforcement. Give us the information that is needed so we can hopefully get in front of it as well and provide a great case to the district attorney.
Chief, I must tell you, if you can't answer this question, I understand. And I should have told you that I was going to ask it in advance, and I should have the numbers. Approximately how many calls for service might the police make in a year, for example, the year 2021? And I regret if I'm putting you on the spot. If anybody can ask, because I know that it's
Give me 1 second. I actually received a report on the number of calls for service from our communications division. So give me 1 second. I will be able to answer.
I say that because of the obvious, and it's been brought up before. I think our council president may have referred to this. Some people say that the police didn't come right away, or some people say that the police came next day, or I was waiting for them because I suspected that someone was attempting to get into my house, and eventually the police do come. Can you tell us on the, for the record, how many calls for service the New Orleans Police Department may have made recently or in 2021?
So for the year 2021, we responded to 431,814 calls for the year of 2021. Just last month alone, 31,355.
Could you describe the calls for service?
I don't have it detailed. I don't
know. But it's everything.
It is everything. I don't have it broken down, but it is everything from a damaged garbage can to a homicide.
Thank you very much. 31,000 calls for service last month.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the work that you've done. As I mentioned, the police department, very difficult job. When people say that they hear semi-automatic fire, as they did recently on Davie Street, they call the New Orleans Police Department.
Yes.
When they see that somebody's right there engaging in a crime involving a gun, they call the New Orleans Police Department. Very difficult job. I appreciate the work of the New Orleans Police Department.
Thank you, sir.
Just a follow-up. Let's have a civilian respond to the broken trash can instead of a police officer. So I just wanted to bring that up one more time. And also, Chief, I sent Tara and your office the latest report from Jeff Asher that he has today, and it's about overall manpower time, and it looks like and you can read the whole report, but on manpower time, it looks like 25% of time spent by commissioned officers, less than 25%, is spent on major crimes.
Mm-hmm.
So once again, back to the point of the more that we can use non-commissioned officers for all the other stuff, like the garbage can, the better off that will be.
I agree, yes.
Okay, let's see. Let me get the public comment cards. 1 second. All right, Ms. Ford. Is Ms. Ford still here? Come on up, Ms. Ford.
And I want to thank the police office too. And I get a chance to work with them sometimes as well. And I'm always honored when I do. I appreciate the work that you do because you put your lives in jeopardy every time you step out. And we appreciate that as a community. But because we don't want crime in our community. Nobody does. But I still don't hear enough dialogue about trying to over-police as a result for the issues that we face in our community. We really need to have resources to the grassroots community, not just the faith-based community, because God knows the faith-based community, we got some preachers getting lots of money from the city of New Orleans. We need dollars in the grassroots community for the work that we doing out here, not just pouring money back into the police department. We cannot over-police this issue that we have here in New Orleans. We need to look at what other communities are doing. I applaud you for saying that, because we have to be innovative. We are innovative people here in the city of New Orleans. We can't keep putting this kind of pressure on our police department to be the keeper of all crimes. When people thinking about committing a crime, we can't do that. We have to be about channeling some resources to help to prevent the crime from happening, not just after it happens. I don't need police to see me getting killed. I don't want to get killed. So that's what I want to say.
Thank you, Ms. Ford. Thank you, Ms. Ford. Do we have any online comments? Nope, no online comments. Okay. Well, I see no more questions from the dais. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you all
Thank
very
you all
much.
again for your support.
Appreciate your support.
I'm definitely looking forward to more dialogue and how we can work together. Thank you.
For sure. Okay, thank you. All right, that completes agenda item 4C. That takes us to agenda item 4D, the Orleans Parish Sheriff, Susan Hutson. So let's go ahead and switch out the teams, please.
Go to the end. You see that?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
You can begin whenever you'd like, and please introduce your team.
Thank you, Council President. Good afternoon to all the council members. I'm Susan Hutson, Sheriff. I am here today with some of my executive team, who I will introduce now. To my immediate left is Assistant Sheriff Kristen Morales, who is over Information Technology and Internal Investigations. To my right is Assistant Sheriff Perlina Thomas, who is over Administration and Governance. And to her right is Assistant Sheriff Laura Veazey, who is over External Affairs for our agency. Also have my Chief Public Information Officer, Tim Ray, here, and Special Assistant to the Sheriff, Lieutenant Aaron Washington. Thank you for having me. I'll go ahead and begin. I have a vision and a plan to address our staffing crisis. That plan has been accelerated after the events of this weekend. That plan includes fixing the immediate issues at hand in the jail, the physical issues, bringing up staffing, using technology to be more efficient and to help with behavioral issues, and moving our team around within the agency as a whole to provide proper coverage. But that long-term staffing plan can't be achieved in 45 days, which is today for this administration. And I also want to say that 2 deaths in 3 days will no longer be treated as business as usual in the jail. I pulled every resource I had available to me to protect the lives in that jail. But I did so after conferring with the DA, the public defender, the mayor, chief judges. I spoke to the city council president, I spoke to the clerks of court, and I told them all this was all necessary and why. During this transition, we were not allowed a full access to staffing and information that we needed. Since taking office, we see every day how understaffed OJC is, how much more training is needed for our deputies, and how the building itself needs retrofitting to make it safe. And we're going to provide you more information about that. I understand that just temporarily pausing full proceedings of the court was called disruptive by some, and lots of comments were made about it in the media. But I wish more of us would act with the same urgency to prevent more lives from being lost inside the jail. The 2 deaths that occurred was a wake-up call, not just for our agency, but for our city. And I sounded the alarm because we all have to fix this system, and I cannot, and none of us can get complacent with losing lives. I want to note that the court has closed in the past. In December 2017, May 2018, July 2019, the courts closed because the elevators stopped working. The courts have closed when the AC has been out. The courts have closed when water pressure is low. Surely, protecting human life outweighs elevators not working or AC going out. My top priority is the safety of every life under my care, whether it's the residents or the employees at OJC. And I had to take immediate action to save lives this weekend. The DA understood that and agreed to work with us. The public defender understood that and agreed to work with us. And the mayor is playing an active role in helping to solve our staffing and our facility crisis. And I am asking for your help as well. I know that Mr. Nealon died on a Sunday, and I'm hearing that that was inconvenient for our criminal legal system. But that is when it occurred, and that is when we had to take action and move forward. I think the district attorney said it best. We all have to be ready when these things go down. And I thank those partners for helping us. I also want to note that I met this week with Judge Lance Afric and Magistrate Michael North, because staffing at OJC is a part of the consent decree and under their purview. Staffing at the courts, of course, is not. But I was right in calling out this alarm because, of course, they want to know more about what is going on and what happened with these 2 horrible deaths. I was right to sound the alarm. I was right to take immediate action. We had to do something different. And we had a great conversation about what we need to do and the immediate changes that can be made to help fix parts of OJC that will save lives. And I look forward to bringing you more information about that. And before I wrap up my comments, I want to turn it over to Assistant Sheriff Perlina Thomas to talk about staffing, and then we will go to Assistant Sheriff Morales about information technology.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and council members. A number of things that have taken place. I can give you the numbers based on our meetings that we had with the judges, and we were able to satisfy the commitments that we made to the judges. We did, in fact, have officers at the court on Monday. We had 6 officers there to man the door, so there were people present. But I'd like to say that Councilmember Morrell stated it eloquently just a few moments ago. In time of crisis, everyone must respond. And so supporting my boss, our sheriff's directive to have everyone report to OJC before we deployed anyone to any other areas where we have coverage is exactly what we needed to do. In our meeting with the judges Monday evening and then yesterday, the judges made it clear that they have a rotating schedule, Mondays and Wednesdays and then Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we were able to satisfy that, and we have a plan to rotate those officers out. So we know exactly what we're going to be doing to move forward with criminal court to make sure that officers are there satisfied. Going forward, we have discovered that we have nearly 300 commissioned officers that are in various places. Some of them are in administration. What happened this past weekend gave us the opportunity to do a really deep dive into where our employees are and how we can make those commissioned officers who are performing administrative duties, we can better utilize them in OJC and in other places where we are responsible for better service and protection. We are looking at taking our rank and making our rank 12-hour shifts and getting away from the unit manager structure that was put in place by the receiver when he was over OJC. We are identifying, so we are moving forward with expediting some of our recruits to have them take the level 2 basic correctional class to allow them then to become deputies, which will give them an increase in pay, and then also allow them to receive the state supplemental pay of $500 a month. Right now, we have 11 recruits in a class that will finish their class on June 27th, and we will allow them to start doing their rotation into OJC to start having some hands-on training as early as this Friday. That class is the 92-hour level 3 correctional class, and we are doing we have a robust and recruitment plan that we're working on. Unlike NOPD, we don't have to have people take the civil service exam. So we can have people that can be hired and go into our correctional training program. And we're looking at, one of the things with the consent decree is us providing the Travis Hill School. We're looking at opportunities that we can actually take people even without a GED and allow them to come into our training program and help them achieve their GED. We're setting up relationships with community colleges and our 4-year institutions to help people for recruiting purposes and also retention purposes, to help people advance and to achieve some of those achieve those educational requirements. We are streamlining our onboarding process and looking to introduce a shift differential pay for people to work at night. We have a lot of people that want to work during the day, but we're going to look to have a shift differential pay that encourage people to want to work at night. And we're performing an audit to design and implement a fair, equitable, merit-based opportunities for advancement with a pay scale that promotes retention. We're looking at the resources right now. Jefferson Parish just had a bond measure approved that allows substantial increases to their sheriff's office. So we're looking to see how we can have you all as partners help us with increasing our salaries to make our salaries more retention. And just looking at ways that we can better partner with all of our law enforcement partners so we can increase our staff and improve our retention. We have another robust part of our recruitment plan is for civilian employees. Because of the council and the mayor's efforts to raise our minimum wage to $15, we can actually start hiring people on those civilian roles for even sanitation, starting at $15 an hour. So we're going to pull those deputies from those civilian roles and look to hire more civilians to start taking those roles.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Also, we have 58 reserve officers, and we're rotating our reserve officers in OJC and in other capacity. Our reserve officers serve a lot in our community meetings, our community engagement events. And so just at the one we had this past weekend, we had over 20 people come and talk to us about recruitment, about coming on board with OPSO, with Orleans Parish Sheriff's Office. And some of them are looking to come from other agencies. They want to come on board. They want to find ways. Every time we go and meet out with the public is excited to work with the new sheriff, and we're trying to find ways to expedite allowing that to happen.
Thank you. Assistant Sheriff Thomas. Assistant Sheriff Morales.
Good afternoon. So we're going to focus on just the technology portion. So the goal here is to overhaul our technology to contribute to the safety of OPSO staff and the incarcerated population. More particularly, though, we want to overhaul our jail management system. That's a big topic of conversation. We have a very robust system, but it can be very difficult to navigate. The idea is to improve the safety and the efficiency of our agency by automating and integrating with our criminal justice partners. We're going to use a layered approach. The system will be used to track the status of the incarcerated population and the interactions with our staff. Our goal is to manage and monitor in real time and maximize compliance of our policies, procedures, and consent decree. The next is we're going to be using technology to create a more humane and rehabilitative environment. This is to address some of the behaviors of our incarcerated population. So example would be providing them tablets where they're provided educational material, where those who want to seek a trade can receive those materials online in a tablet format. religious materials. We also want to deliver our services through these devices. We want to be able to have them communicate with their families and attorneys and have access to rehabilitative services. And lastly is upgrading our technology equipment. The emphasis will be on our training our employees, specifically with upgrading the computers that they use currently. The staff will have access to training that will be available 24/7 and can accommodate their schedules. This will be incentivized by the more training they're provided, the more credentials they can obtain. We can provide better opportunities for pay raises.
Retention.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anything else? Okay, thank you. And just to wrap up, I want to invite this committee to come to OJC. I want to invite you to come watch the video of the two incidents yourself. And let me tell you, it is very difficult to watch. But our community elected all of us to handle the tough, hard crises that occur and to make the tough decisions. I made a tough decision, but it was the right decision. I also want you to see the facility and how areas of it are very unsafe and need upgrades immediately. But I thank the men and women of this department for working so hard to deal with the limitations that we have. And I'm sure the council member wasn't being flippant about the deaths at OJC when he made his comment, but I want this council to know that not only do we chew gum and walk at the same time, but we are flying this broken plane, keeping it in midair 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and 365 days a year while we are fixing it and doing a good job. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Harris.
Thank you, Sheriff. I appreciate the information on staffing. So there are 300 commissioned officers currently?
Yes.
How many are doing administrative duties?
We're still doing an analysis of that.
When will that analysis be done?
I hope to have it completed by the end of the week. I can tell you that nearly half
are on administrative duties?
Yes, and some of those administrative duties could be considered like HR, our HR investigators. It falls under administration, but they are very instrumental into making sure that the background checks are done. So it could be that sort of thing. It doesn't mean that they're not directly connected to OJC or the functions that get us to OJC. We just have to make sure a number of them are in the record room with our investigations. So their roles are significant. In the areas where we can, in fact, have civilian employees, we're going to look to hire civilian employees to do that. We have to look at a pay scale that's equitable to what that would allow us to be able to have the proper people in those places to do that.
Do you have a goal on the timeline for that?
Our recruitment program?
Your civilian recruitment program?
Yes, civilian recruitment program. We're looking to launch that. So the sheriff asked us to do 30, 60, 90-day plans. So that is in our 60-day plan since we're now in that 60-day window. So before we reach before we get to our 60-day in office, we're going to look to have that. We're at 45 now, so 2 weeks.
No, I understand the timing. On the staffing, though, of the pods, how many officers are in with the inmates watching the folks who are incarcerated?
Council member, we do not want to talk about pod security or numbers. We are glad to talk about that offline because it's a sensitive issue and a security issue.
Okay. How many, what is the current jail population?
The current jail population is a total of 962. That's 911 at OJC, 19 at TDC, 16 at TMH, and 14 with the feds, and 2 who are housed out of parish.
Okay. How does this jail population compare to years past? Is this lower, higher?
It's significantly higher, lower than Fody when Sheriff Fody was in office.
Of course, right.
But it's
higher than it was last year campaign.
Okay. Okay, we can't talk about that, but we'll talk offline. What about contraband? I know that there's concern about contraband getting into the facility. What are your plans on curbing that? Do you have any plans?
Yes, we have a number of plans. One is when we came on board 45 days ago, the scanners were broken that allow us to scan packages, and we've had ISB and IAD at our entrances to start checking bags. We already have a policy in place where any bags that come in are clear bags. HR is working diligently and looking at best practices in other places regarding allowing employees who have medication to take their medication in front of a supervisor so that we're not bringing medication into the facility. We are increasing our number of lockers so the employees could keep all the medication outside of actual OJC. That way we don't have an excuse that someone has medication on them if we have an issue with that. We are getting ready to install the new X-ray scanners. We did a mini solicitation. We did a piggyback off the solicitation that was done by Jefferson Parish. So we did a mini solicitation to expedite getting in the new X-ray scanners. We also are installing new body scanners, and the body scanners, the new scanners will actually have a data package that allows us to track and keep up with even our employees every time they're scanned, so we have a pattern of what that looks like and start tracking that data differently. So just next week we'll have new body scanners installed and the new package X-ray scanners installed.
But let me also talk about some of the contraband comes from inside the jail, like weapons, and it comes from the structure of the jail itself. And so we just want to note that those are some of the immediate changes that we need to make. Broken glass, hooks that can be fashioned into weapons, sockets being taken out. If you will take us up on that tour, we would love to show you exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, I've spoken to Ms. Beasy about coming over to
and to the sheriff's point, we already started decommissioning, meaning taking out the supply closets where we keep cleaning supplies, but some of those things are able to be taken loose to turn into a shank, so we're going to remove those and create a different system for sanitation to get the materials to the inmates so that they can clean their cells and we keep the pods clean. We're also taking out cabinets that were not the best design, and they're easily ripped apart to be turned into shanks. So we started ripping out those cabinets to clean out to clean up those spaces, and staff started ripping those things out so we can remove any opportunity to make those shanks.
I want to turn back to the staffing. So around 300 commissioned officers. Can you give me the number who are on? Well, we can't talk about that. What is your ideal?
I'm sorry, point of order. I don't agree with that. I don't agree that we can't talk about that. I think that staffing within the jail is public information. It's information that when I was in the legislature, we would get information from all of the different prisons around the state, and they would provide us information on how many deputies were working within their prisons. I don't believe that is secret information. I think that's pertinent information that the council and the public should have. So out of the 300 commissioned officers, how many are working in the jail?
I disagree, and I'm going to tell you that one of the incidents that occurred this weekend occurred because the residents knew who was on the pod and who wasn't.
Well, that's knowing. That's totally different. That's knowing who's deployed where. I'm not asking you about who's deployed within the jail. I'm asking you how many you have working in the jail. We already found out this morning how many are going to be working
that work at the jail.
That's exactly what we're asking. How many commissioned officers are working at the jail?
Monday through Friday, we have 148, and then Saturday and Sunday, 140. The additional Monday through Friday is to satisfy the need to transport inmates to school, the Travis Hill school that's inside the jail.
What were the weekend numbers one more time?
140.
Thank you. Councilmember Harris.
Thank you. What is the ideal number of officers that you would like to have?
Somewhere in the officers, we need another 150 employees. We're about 650 right now.
626.
626. So the closer we could get to 800, the better we would be, and that's a combination of administrative now. As we're going to move deputies over, we're going to lose some of those deputies. As we called everybody over on Monday, some didn't show up, and those are going to be disciplinary issues. Not everybody wants to work there, so we have to change that culture. We're hoping to do it a little more slowly, but the problem is here right now, so that could increase.
Do you have a recruitment plan, or is that something in your 30, 60-day plan?
We do have a recruitment plan. We are going to roll it out we still have to release it internally, and then we can roll it out. But happy to share that with you as soon as it is approved.
Okay, and then what is the rate of pay for your officers?
It varies. Once it varies, I would actually have to get you a number. And
Start at 1557.
Started at 1557. So one of the things that we found out was that there was not a fair and equitable pay scale. So we have our CFO, we're working very closely with our CFO and in designing a pay scale that is fair and equitable with the jobs that are done. We had a great disparity with some people who were, their titles changed, and sometimes they retain that pay. And so we need to make sure that we're fair and equitable, and we have a pay scale that allows people to grow, and they can see where they can progress and start treating the department as a place for a career and not just a job.
So was the average 1557? Is that correct?
That's not the average. That's immediately after the 92-hour state required.
Those are the recruits.
Yes, that's the basic level. And so after the 92-hour program, you can start working in OJC as a recruit. But a lot of those recruits do the same duties as deputies. So one thing we're doing, as I mentioned, we're going to expedite having the classes so that we can make all these officers who've been in the recruit status for some more than 2 years. They've been in that recruit phase to allow them to become deputies where they get a pay increase and they then get the $500 a month state supplemental pay.
Okay, where are we with the consent decree?
We are, I believe, I don't have the numbers under. We're close to halfway in substantial compliance, and another small percentage. No, it's a little bit larger than that percentage in partial compliance. But I don't have those entire numbers for you.
Okay, what I'm going to do is just follow up with an email asking for data like average rate of pay, compliance, percentage of compliance, and some other questions that I'm sure the other council members will have, and we'll present that to you so we can take a look at it. Thank
And
you.
on the average rate of pay, we'd like to give you what we have now,
Yeah.
and then give you what we're trying to do. And one thing is adding the shift differential for pay for the PM shift, the 6:30 p.m. to 6:30 a.m. shift.
Okay, and back to Council President's point, 148, 140. How many, going back to my original question, how many would be ideal on duty at any one time on the weekdays and weekends? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I didn't hear it.
So you said 148 officers on weekdays and 140 on weekends. What would be ideal for actually being on shifts for you? What are you looking at?
Nearly 200.
You'd rather have 200.
And that would allow what we would call rover. That would allow us to, we have to factor in when we have call-outs. We have to factor in when we have coverage for vacations, coverages for lunch, just different things. So having additional staff and maximizing the coverage for every pod and all the different sections where we have inmates, then we need to, nearly 200 would be an ideal number.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me just start with, as far as in the jail, what is the work that's done to screen for violent offenders? How do you screen to see who could be a potential severe danger to themselves or others?
WellPath does a screening when they initially come in, and then we have a classification unit that also looks at them and prioritizes whether or not they, are some type of gang affiliation or some other affiliation or something that would make them subject to possibly becoming a victim. Or being a perpetrator as well. So those are the primary two units, and then we continually assess that depending on what goes on in the jail. And moving somebody is a big deal, but we do have to do that on a regular basis.
So for those who are classified to be the most dangerous, the ones that could be violent toward others, how are those particular offenders treated within the prison, within the jail?
What do you mean?
I mean, are they put into, is there like, I remember hearing in the past about there was, Supermax, which is like the kind of the maximum security. Are they put into, is there like Supermax for the most dangerous? Like, explain to me how that works. I'm not super familiar.
Yeah.
So, if someone is classified as high security, they're placed on a pod that they are in an individual cell, and they have, they're 23 hours down, 1 hour out a day.
And how many offenders do you have in that super high security?
I don't have that information in front of me. I can send it to you.
And it fluctuates day to day.
It fluctuates.
Yeah.
On the situation that happened with the fight between the three individuals that resulted in death, unfortunately, with that, you had said that somehow the inmates had learned about the staffing levels at the pod. Was there staff? You had just said that a second ago. Was there staff present in the pod?
There was staff present in the module. You have a it's easier if you could see it, but you have an oversight module where you could watch different pods, and so there was staff in the pod.
In the oversight module or in the pod?
I'm sorry, staff in the oversight module.
There was staff in the oversight module, but not in the pod.
I can't say at that moment, no.
So, okay, so it doesn't seem like at that moment there was staff in the pod, is what you're saying. I got you.
But we can't get too deep into the investigation. It's not finished yet. We promise to be transparent about the entire thing.
And I understand that. I know that you have an investigation to do, but I think it's also important to understand. If we're talking about staff and potential lack of staff, that if there wasn't staff in a pod where that's resulted in a horrible fight and now death, I think that that's something important that this council needs to understand and know about, particularly since the sheriff then had to take emergency steps to try to figure out how to redeploy staff. So after you had a terrible fight and death, and then a subsequent suicide happened, Sheriff, explain to me the recall efforts and how that worked and who all you recalled as you tried to figure out next steps to control the situation within the jail.
Yeah. Well, first I want to say this. While we were, after the incident occurred on Sunday, we all respond there, start watching.
Explain which incident.
The suicide on Sunday, Mr. Nealon. We all respond there and start looking at it, start watching the videos. We can see all the videos of the pods right there in front of us. And there were other folks. This incident, these two incidents destabilized the jail to where there were people wanting to copycat, do other things. So it caused just a huge issue throughout the entire system, overwhelming us. And so we had to do something. That's when I started making phone calls and talking to folks. And then the recall effort, and Assistant Sheriff Thomas can talk about it more, was we had to bring everybody in from whatever location, kitchen warehouse, civil district court, recruiting, transportation, all of our units to come in because we knew some people weren't going to show up. We didn't know how many we were going to need to do things. We still have to comply with the consent decree, take people to their, make sure people are being taken to the hospital or seeing their lawyers. All these types of things still have to go on. So we didn't know how many people we were going to have, so we basically recalled, if I'm not incorrect, everybody to come in at 8 o'clock that morning so we could start assessing how many people we actually had and then start looking at what we need.
And how many people did you actually have?
On that morning? How many people do we have on?
I don't have that number with me. Nearly 169.
So 169 deputies showed up?
Yeah.
Out of the 300 commissioned?
Sorry. I'm sorry, because I didn't have that number in front of me. I think it was more like 115.
Wait,
115, not 169.
115 officers showed up when you
recalled
recalled
I added
everyone.
the people in the evening when I gave you the 169 number.
Okay, so 115 showed up when you recalled everyone.
Right.
Out of the 300 deputies, commissioned officers.
we called the people from the courts and from all of the courts to come in. We did not recall all of the administrative people. This is, we're learning as we go. As Sheriff Hutson mentioned, we were not privy to a true transition and allowed to get into the facility and start meeting employees and understanding a real lay of the land of what we had. So to get to that number and understand where we had a number of commissioned officers serving in administrative roles, I had to do a request to know everyone who's receiving state supplemental pay. That's how I was able to find out everyone who's actually commissioned and could serve. That's when I found a number of administrative people. So we didn't know to call them in because we didn't know that they were actually commissioned.
So that means that it wasn't until this week that you realized how many commissioned officers you actually have working for you?
In some cases, yeah, we didn't know that everybody was commissioned.
So you didn't know that you had 300 commissioned officers until this week?
Yes.
Is there a requirement by the monitors to have a certain number of commissioned officers?
I'm not ask that question again.
Is there a requirement by the consent decree, the monitors, to have a certain number of commissioned officers?
No, but there's a requirement for the pods to be staffed appropriately. But I want to say we knew how many deputies, we knew how many people we had. What we had to do though was recall them all in. So everybody gets a paycheck. We knew how many people were in the system. We had to pull that out and start looking at that to start getting them all in here. We knew how many people we had.
So back to what you just said in your previous statement, that there is a requirement by the consent decree as to the pods needing to be staffed appropriately, correct? I think there might also be a requirement by the monitors to have, I believe, a potential minimum of 325 commissioned officers is the information that I've been given, but please double check on that. I think that could be important information as well. So moving forward, what are the steps being taken to, I mean, right now, so that we have a plan to ensure we don't end up in this same situation again? I mean, you're required by law to provide staffing or security staffing for the court. What's happening now as far as bringing all stakeholders together to ensure that if there's another emergency that happens, whether, God forbid, it's another emergency at the jail, or whether it's some act of God or storm or whatever it could be, that you have a plan to be ready to execute and keep the jail safe, and also ensure that staffing does occur as legally mandated within the courts and other priorities.
Yeah, we were working on a long-term staffing plan when these incidents occurred, so we had to just go into emergency mode. But as the assistant sheriff said, that includes locating all deputies. They also have to be trained to be able to work at the jail. There are certain trainings that are required, so we have to make sure they have all that, so we know which ones are there, and we need to rotate. We still do need them at the kitchen warehouse, for instance, because wherever we have residents, cooking or doing whatever, we have to have them there. So our game plan is, which we are working on now, and it took only 2 days, and really the first day was the trial run, but it only took us 2 days after this emergency went down that afternoon to be able to make sure we have staffing where we need it right now and to pull in these other resources. And now we will bring on new recruits at the end of this week, and we're bringing on reserves, which it takes a minute to be able to get them because they have full-time jobs outside of the agency, to be able to fold them in as well. So that is what we've been working on, and we should be finished with that fairly soon.
Mm-hmm. And can I just ask this, and with all due respect, I mean, you're in how many days in office? 45 days?
45.
45 days. Why wasn't it done day one in office to try to figure out just how many people you had working for you, in particular, how many commissioned deputies?
We had a list of everybody who worked for us. We have a payroll list of that. And additionally, when we first came into office, there were a number of fires that had to be put out as well. A number of issues occurred that first week that we had to work on. And then we were able to sit down and get into planning mode to work on these other things. So, but one of the things that became very clear was that the facility was not safe and there were certain structural things we needed to work on right away. And that included getting a game plan to get these certain fixtures out, fix the scanner.
All right, we back in the saddle, man. I was watching the whole time. Let me know in the chat what y'all think of what Sheriff Hutson has been saying. If y'all sort of agree with her reasoning of the all sort of sound the alarms, let me know in the chat. Let's talk about it.
It's right there on our payroll list, but in terms of making sure that we could bring everybody in and where they're located at and bring them all in, that was the priority for this week after the emergency.
Once again, I go back to that first question. I get it that you're looking at payroll and things like that, but why not in your first couple of days of office bring everybody in as the new sheriff and see exactly who you've got and who is available?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
I said that within the first couple of days, and I get it that you have your payroll paperwork, but why not in the first couple of days take that opportunity to bring everyone in, bring in your troops, see who all you have, talk to the troops, all of that whole piece, and then have a real assessment at that point, just in case there should be some type of emergency.
Right. Well, the jail had been operating for 5 months until we got in there with essentially the same personnel and had been operating. So that it wasn't an emergency at that time. But what we did do was, as we brought all of our team on board, and all weren't on board right away, including the person who's running the jail, we had to we started doing that. We started conducting what we call desk audits of every single employee to find out what they do, what their duties are, where they're located, all that. We didn't get to all 626 right away, but we were getting there. And we did start doing that. We also had an incomplete organizational chart, which we've had to build out. So it's been a challenge, but we 45 days, I think we're doing a pretty good job trying to get all that together. And then there was information that wasn't available when we got in. So there was just some things we could not find or locate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilmember Morrell, then Councilmember Green.
Thank you. I'll be brief. A couple of things. So according to what you've presented to us, and I have no reason to doubt it, the starting pay of a sheriff with you guys is $15.57.
For deputies.
Deputies, sorry.
Not deputies, that's recruits. That's right out of recruiting class.
What does a deputy make when they become a deputy?
It's closer to 19 an hour.
That's 19 an hour or 19?
Yeah.
What's the annual salary?
I would have to get that for you. It's I think 1936 an hour, and I'd have to do the math quickly.
Okay. I think it's important to note that, because remember, one of the challenges that the sheriff's office is always going to have is that in other parishes, when they recruit a recruit to be a deputy, they start in the jail, but most of them move to the street afterwards. Mm-hmm. And it is very unattractive as a competing law enforcement agency. You're not really competing with sheriffs, you're competing with jails.
Right.
And it's very important when you're looking at what the starting salaries will be, that you at least are meeting the minimum of beating what they're paying for a jail, because there's it takes a certain kind of person with the stomach and the ability to work and the personal fortitude to want to work 24/7 as their full-time job in a facility.
Yes.
So I would be very interested if y'all could look at comparing not just what you make compared to other sheriffs, but what is being offered in public and private facilities, because that's really who you're competing with in the short term. Go ahead.
Sorry, we are, because we are creating a pay plan for the first time.
Okay, sorry, I had a little side conversation going on.
And to your point, sir, with the pay increases that were just approved with the millage that was passed in Jefferson Parish, we have to do everything we can to hold on to the employees that we have.
Well, the challenge you're going to have, and it's the same challenge the previous sheriff had, is that there's a double-edged sword to being an elected law enforcement officer. If the public really believes in your mission, and the public really believes that the service you provide directly impacts them in a way that they can wrap their head around, you can get public millage dollars all day. I mean, I cannot recall the last time that a Jefferson Parish sheriff lost a millage. They all passed because the Jefferson Parish sheriff is the chief law enforcement officer and manages the jail. The fact that people are happy with the outcomes as far as law enforcement, the jail benefits from it. When a jail is standalone, like when you look at kind of the challenges of St. Tammany right now with their center and their jail as a separate millage item, it's failed repeatedly because there's a lack of public understanding or really.
So look, I think what we're seeing from JP is he's presenting some clear issues that, listen, these are the issues that this sheriff has inherited, but these are just the issues that you're going to have to work with. So I think what will be important and will be interesting to see is how the new Sheriff Hutson, how will she be creative within the confines to get it done?
At least in your first year, without something significantly happen, the public is going to approve any kind of millage to increase anything right now. I think really, realistically, you're looking at a year or two of performance and trying to educate the public on the importance of jails and how it affects outcomes and public safety for them to want to do that.
I mean, look, you basically have JP giving her the game, telling her what she has to do. And so now she's just going to have to step up and do it and prove it to the people.
Office more involved in law enforcement. And I think had that happened before today or even before the last couple of years, you would have been better positioned to make the argument in the way the public can understand that funding the jail increases public safety. But right now it's funding the jail. So I just want to kind of make that. I also want to speak to the fact, I know you guys are working towards kind of getting an assessment of where things are currently. I think it's going to be really important to really explain why the sheriff to I want to try not say inmate, the sheriff to resident ratio is so high in New Orleans and the outcome is still so bad. And I say that because I was anecdotally talking to Jimmy Pullman. He has basically 15 sheriffs per platoon managing 207 individuals that are incarcerated in St. Bernard Parish. That breakdown is like a 1 to 13 ratio. He's got one sheriff per around 13 residents. With 148 on the weekdays, the number I have in my head is 800. Is that off? How off is that with how many people you have currently incarcerated?
Currently incarcerated at OJC?
Yeah.
911.
Okay, so you're probably around 1 per 8, maybe. I'm just using math in my head. I think that part of what is going to be important on educating the public is what is unique to New Orleans. I'm sure what's going to happen when you have the BGRs and the PARs looking at your staffing problems and all the different incentives you're going to put forward to try and get council or public funding to increase your ratio, you're going to be judged against the other sheriffs and how they manage their populations. Now, we have historic systemic challenges in Orleans Parish. That's beyond.
Look, there's a lot of things that people can say about JP. But listen, your man is definitely going to have his numbers, and he's definitely going to make sure you know he got his numbers.
Have that breakdown. I will say also, and I think it's something that everyone's going to have to address very directly, when you look at the suicide that happened on Sunday, you look at the circumstances of it as reported by the media, and you look at what a facility that Phase 3 would look like, all of the conclusions that have been brought since Sunday is that had that individual been in the Phase 3 facility, he would have been incapable of doing what he did. If that is not true, or if because I know that there's still the city's position is still, they are against Phase 3. They are still fighting the sheriff's positions. I'm against Phase 3. I think it's important that you're able to have an argument to articulate that through a retrofit, it would have prevented the suicide that happened on Sunday, because the narrative is already out there that looking at the Phase 3 plans, what happened would not have been possible. So I'm just kind of offering that as something you're going to have to be able to address pretty concisely, because everyone, I know you were very upset, your office is very upset with the outcome, which is good. I'm glad that you I think any human being should be upset when someone ends their life that way in such a dramatic fashion, or any fashion really. Just generally speaking, suicides make all of us face our own mortality. But I think that we have to be able to articulate in a public-facing way what our strategy is to change the outcomes, even in the way the facility is currently structured.
Well, and that's a good point, which is about when we're trying to compare ourselves to others.
Jean-Paul Van Damme, man. Jean-Paul Van Damme.
But even, I don't believe these two people would have been in that facility. I don't think they would have fit that acute mental health crisis issue. He had not.
You mean the individual who jumped?
Neither that died this weekend. I don't believe either one of them would have fit in that. So the thing I want to emphasize is that facility, which will, I think, hold 100 people, will not hold.
No, that's a very interesting narrative right there. Y'all heard? I don't know if y'all heard what she just said though, because there was a lot of talk about because of suicide. There was a mental health thing.
So
the sheriff just said, basically just said like, yo, that's not what this was. That's very interesting.
It is dangerous.
That's very interesting. You need to follow up on that.
And really want to show you why. But I hear what your point is. We do need to treat folks who have acute mental illness better, and maybe in a hospital setting is what we really need. I'd love to be able to have our community and the council lead the way on that. But these two people, I don't believe would have been in there.
Like I said, I'm not making the argument for or against phase 3. I'm saying the argument's being made. And I think the challenge is, I know this is, once you get into the public sphere as an elected official, and it's something that I've faced my entire term. Most people, well, there's 2 new people up here. Most have faced it in other different capacities. Whenever you go in front of the public, they scrutinize everything we do and every reaction we have. It is beyond argument that there are going to be financial needs for the prison. Consent decree or not, there's going to be financial obligations related to the prison. I think it's very important that your team be able to articulate in a transparent way how those needs are being addressed, what the plan's going to be, because once you start to lose public confidence and they start to write off that you can't handle what you're handling, it gets very hard to get it back, in my experience. So really, all these comments are not meant to say, they're really meant to be a suggestion that this is the dynamic that's beginning to be created in the public sphere, and it's important for you to get in front of it before it gets too far out of hand. I do want to make one comment.
Thank you for that advice. I will push back on that, and when our 100-day plan comes out, we'll be very clear.
And the last piece, as a former public defender working in criminal district court, I do want to say it's not fair to equate shutdowns with a lack of security, in particular to water and elevators. Because not having water in a facility is an OSHA violation, and not having an elevator is an ADA violation. Any public building with elevators out has to close. So those 2 things. Air conditioner, I'll give you that. I worked.
I mean, yeah, she may not be a psychiatrist, but I doubt she would have said that void of having a conversation with somebody who is a psychiatrist. So, but I hear what you're saying. I don't think she would have made that statement without the medical knowledge of that. But that's a good that was a good catch.
If the water stopped working in a building, you have to shut it down with any employees involved because of OSHA. So I think that we understand
that may also be a fair criticism, right? That she was not for mental health facilities and concerns. So I mean, who knows? It's a good point as well.
Individuals who you're holding, we're waiting for their day in court. It's not fair the victims and the individuals who prep for that day. And though I do appreciate this was a crisis situation, recent history says this is going to happen more often than not until you're able to get a handle on what you were left. I mean, the reality is that though it's unfortunate, and I appreciate you respond so strongly to when we have unfortunate circumstances in the prison, no matter what you do in the short term, we're going to have more people by the nature of the dilapidated building, with the resources you didn't have when you came in, all those different things. This is going to happen again. I don't think it's acceptable for the public or this council or the judges to say, and when it happens, we're going to shut down criminal court again and everything's going to stop. I think that there needs to be a plan to make sure that that part of the criminal justice system.
Listen, if anybody ever, I mean, listen, this is their job. I understand this is the city council's job, but they've been adjudicating this one matter really
that's why we spoke
for
to them
5
about
hours, and we still have an entire thing to get to in respect to the surveillance and the facial recognition and eye on surveillance. So we still got a long haul. We're gonna go the distance on this one, guys.
About a lot of things like trying to get back to pre-pandemic levels. Well, if our agency's not back, we can't do that. But we are going to make sure that the criminal legal system can function. Because we do want to get people out of this jail. We've been working on that nonstop. We've sent people to the Department of
Y'all cut it in the comments. Listen, I mean, that's an interesting point. It's rare for a sane person to jump headfirst off of a platform.
2014. They didn't get a speedy trial. I don't know what's going on with that. We need to sit with these criminal justice partners and find that out. We're doing everything we can to move that forward.
Well, I think my last suggestion to you would be it's probably in everyone's best interest to have more public conversations as a group with what the plan is going to be.
I love that.
Because as you saw from the previous presentations and your presentation, when you don't have public conversations, then everybody gets to leave that conversation with their own interpretation of how it went. So part of people get annoyed with me when I say I don't want to have a private conversation with you about an important item is because I don't want that conversation to be transmitted in a way that's not in a public way. That makes sense.
I agree with you 1,000% on that. And we look forward to continuing to have these conversations. We're in it together.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Green.
Thank you all for coming today. I appreciate your presentation. I have really actually just 2 questions, which always burgeon into 5 or 6 questions. But my question is, for those who are mentally challenged who come into your facility, what special arrangement? Oh, sorry. I just hit it with my arm. What special arrangements are you able to make sure that their families recognize that they're being treated in a special way?
We have, I'm not sure what the WellPath provides the mental health care for our facility through Tulane doctors. So they provide that care and keep those records. I'm not sure what their interactions are with our residents. Now, any family members that reach out to us, such as those who reached out to us this weekend after their loved ones were involved in incidents, we have a chaplain, Cheryl Robinson, who does a great job of making sure we communicate with them, getting them video visitation, as there's no in-person visitation right now. I spoke to the mother of one of them myself, just to update her, and went down and put eyes on him myself as well. So we're trying to, we want it to be a little more user-friendly for families of our residents, so they don't have to worry about that. But right now, that's on an ad hoc basis for us, but to share the other side of it, the medical and mental health side of it, we need to work with WellPath to have a process in place.
So what happens when someone comes in who's mentally unstable or challenged?
Somebody comes in who's mentally ill and what?
Mentally challenged. I'm trying to use the correct words. Family members who are concerned about someone who has been picked up who's mentally challenged. How do they get assistance in the sheriff's office right now?
Well, if they want to, if they have questions for us, they usually will reach out to our office and we'll respond to that, to my office, and I'll respond to that. I haven't received very many of those. Also, our residents have video visitation, so they're allowed to visit their loved ones, and then they are also able to make calls right now, so they're able to call their families as well.
What is done for the mentally challenged person who comes into the system?
Treatment, I'm not sure what you're at. Yeah, they're WellPath with Tulane doctors provides mental health. So
as they enter the facility?
Yeah, they're assessed when they first come in.
That's kind of what I mean.
Okay, sorry. They're assessed when they first come in. They stay on that first floor because of quarantine issues, and then eventually they're brought up after classifying where they'll be.
Someone who's concerned about the separation of inmates by those who are severe risk in terms of committing violence. Is there, in fact, a super max sort of incarceration that exists right now?
Y'all see what's going on.
Yeah, we have a couple of pods that are designated Supermax.
Yeah, we're going to pause from that, and let's go to the mayor's situation that she's got going on.
Another implementation step that
I'm
we're
not really
happy
sure
to
what this is,
celebrate
but let's
today.
just listen in for a
and
second.
So from here, I believe you'll hear from Ernest Johnson, who's the director of
Well, I guess that didn't last long. All right, well, we will go back to the council.
Take longer term than others, but we are working right now on bids about dealing with the structural issues in the jail. And those have to do with railings that people can get on, that has to do with fixtures in the jail that they can dismantle and use. So there's those issues, the broken glass, a number of other things that we inherited that we're.
Oh, okay, so I see what's going on. I don't think it wants to let me do.
Begin to the city. We also would like to thank JJIC for supporting us in our work, the Juvenile Code, and all the community organizations that support a change for young people in our community. I want to say again, thank you for having us, and I'm joined by two of our parent leaders, Ms. Cooper and Ms. Hicks, and I have to acknowledge them because they are the ones that give me the answers to move forward in the work that we do. Thank you.
Absolutely. And Mr. Ernest, you're going to bring up one of our parents leaders to share a few words, please, ma'am.
Hi, I am Shaun Cooper. I am one of the parent navigators for the Hutson Village, and just working with the mayor office and even with Ms. Karen, and just sitting down with a lot of the parents that we have to figure out what we can do as a city. Because as my grandparents say, it takes a village, and the Ubuntu village is here. We are here to take back our city. We have a wonderful mayor that loves us. She loves the children, and she our TD. But we want the parents, the mothers. We want our children to be successful. We want the city of New Orleans to be great as it is already. So we're going to do what we can do to make sure that we are navigating the parents and helping them as much as we can, even with our children, because there are resources. There are resources out there. So.
And can you share, and through your experience, one as a parent and with a young person that you had to navigate and seek help to navigate, how important you see this service,
so
in terms of our parents, connecting them to it?
It's important because sometimes as a parent myself, we all have kids, and we go through things and we feel like there's like no hope. You know what I mean? Like you don't have anybody else there to kind of communicate with, or someone else that you can talk to, but there are people. And it's important to find those resources. Get out there and talk to somebody, because we can't do it by ourselves. It doesn't matter if the mayor can't do it by herself. She has Ms. Emily here. It can't be done. So as a parent, I would say to any parent out there that if you are looking for resources and you feel like you need help, seek it. I mean, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter. I mean, there are Ms. Karen, and there are mental health services that's out there. It's important to find the village.
And we're here.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Right. And we're wanting to hear from the Children's Bureau. Again, as we've mentioned, it's been in our community, in our city for over 130 years, and they're continuing to serve the residents of the city, and particularly our young people. So, Ms. Charlotte, please come forward.
Good afternoon. I'm Charlotte Cunliffe. I'm the President and CEO of Children's Bureau, and we are very grateful for this emerging partnership with the City of New Orleans. As has been mentioned, we've been around for about 130 years, and we've always tried to adapt our services to the needs of the community as time changes.
All right, just to kind of give a little bit of an update of what we got going on here, we have the mayor's press conference, and she's brought out people calling her TD, and we have the ongoing criminal justice situation. So just to kind of bring everybody up to speed, just to set the tone here, we have our DA, the sheriff, the chief of police, and the entire city council right now having a conversation about safety in our city, and Mayor Cantrell decided to bring out people that would call her TD. Let's go back to that press conference live.
We see this opportunity as to be more intentional, to actually try to find partners in the community that are already serving the system-involved youth, and to find a way to embed our services. So if you're already going to, say, the Evening Reporting Center, and you are in need of this service, we're going to be there, instead of them saying, okay, go find another hour in your day. So it's a pilot. It's to try to figure out how to take the resources into youth-serving agencies, having the same conversations with schools, or having the same conversations with workplace training. So trying to go to community-based organizations and bringing our services. So that's kind of our theory right now, is that let's try this and let's build these partnerships out. We were having a conversation in the hallway about, hey, we need to start talking about, y'all are connecting to people, and how we as a community need to do more of that. And less talking, more action, right? Yes, that's right. We want action. Yes,
let's see what Eugene Green is talking about.
Reduce the risk to people becoming victims of crime, but whatever we can do, please be specific. I do look forward to the tour of the facility, and I'd like to do it.
Listen, I would just like to take a pause for the cause. We don't really have to listen to that two box of Eugene Green, and let's see what let's go back to the mayor, I guess. Oh wait, no, we missed it. Yeah, sure. Let's go back to Mbutu Village.
Danny, I am standing here in the collection of others, leadership and partners, to say that we have a youth master plan in the city. Number one, it's a 10-year plan. This is year one of its implementation. And what stands before you, what you've heard so far, are strategies for implementation. Things that are actually going to happen to support the people who need it most, where they need it most, when they need it most, and how they most need it. That's the plan's intention, to find out, with a very specific focus on young people, how we can help lift them up towards the expectation that we hold as a city, that all of our young people are successful entities, all on their own. Sometimes they need a little help, and they need a plan. We've got a plan. Now we have implementation on the sidelines here. Folks who are going to deliver to the end result, which is a positive uplift for our young people, because they all matter. Every single one of them, 112,000 of them, 0 to 24. And so if you want to know more about the plan is available to you. It's a public document. But if you want to see the plan in action, listen to, hear, and see what you've heard today. Because this is what the plan lives like. It lives like deliverable action toward targeted young people that we can see, measure, adjust, and expand. While pilot is our start, it only informs us so we can take it further, because our job is to finish the work, not to just start it. So I stand before you here as a partner of three. The New Orleans Youth Master Plan is built on a partnership with the Mayor's Office of Youth and Families, the New Orleans Youth Alliance, and the New Orleans Children Youth Planning Board. The three of us stand behind the push for partnership, but more importantly, coordination. Because what we believe to be true is that with connection,
too often is humane treatment.
Advance the trust needed to move.
And I don't know if you handled it the right way, given the state statute. You have lawyers. There are lawyers who represent our court system. The lawyers, you guys will figure that out. But too often, folk inside the system, I watched 4 people die from neglect or inhumane treatment. I watched a friend from Uptown get prescribed ibuprofen, and 3 months later, he died as cancer infiltrated his entire body. So on that end, thank you for exercising and moving forward with humanity. But on the professional side, how long was your transition, and when did it start?
We did not have one.
The election was December 11th, and we took office on May 2nd.
So your transition should have started December 13th, correct?
The time period, yes.
When did yours start then?
Yeah, the time period started. We didn't have a real transition.
Why?
We were not able to get an agreement about that. So we started out at the end of December asking for an MOU to govern it, and we accessed information, who provided it, meetings, etc. And the former sheriff wouldn't sign it. He said he was going to comply with it and then didn't. It took time to, there were some things that they did provide us, but everything took a lot of time to get. I didn't even get into the jail until March, and one time I was able to get in there. So it was difficult. It was very difficult.
Okay, you got in March and you took office when again?
I had a walkthrough, about a 2-hour walkthrough in March, and I took office on May 2nd.
Okay, when did you start interviewing the personnel that would be transitioned to your administration?
March 3rd.
You're talking about my executive team? What do you?
No, not just your executive team, but I mean, you have several hundred guards, right, and employees that are different ranks, different classifications, right? They're still there.
Some of them. We lost almost all of the deputy chiefs before I took office, and then we lost the last one when I took office. So a lot of that leadership at the top was just gone, and that was before I got in. And then, and so what was the rest of your question?
So if we're understanding your question correctly, the first time we were actually able to have a meeting with the rank that remained in place was March 3rd.
Okay. 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 That's the rank. But given the people that were going to work under you, and you know, resumes matter, you know, experience matter. I'm trying to get to maybe some things that could not have happened. When did you guys start meeting with the people who were going to transition over to your team?
The former.
You mean that your executive team that you brought on?
I'm not sure who you're talking about, council member.
Hey guys, listen, I'm gonna take about a 20-minute break. I will be on back.